Good morning to you. So, everybody ready to go? I'm not. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 29th, 2023 Placer County Board of Supervisors. We'll start with a flag salute led by Supervisor Gore. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we move on to our regular meeting, we're going to have our District Attorney Morgan Geyer come forward and make some comments about item 1 on our
You're gonna call item 1?
yeah, item 1. That's it, right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for allowing me some time to sort of provide a brief update on the events that transpired with regard to the release of our sexually violent predator, William Stevenson, into Placer County. First, I'd like to sincerely thank, number one, our entire community. It was an incredible showing last week at the community housing meeting. I believe that the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty Healthcare sort of set us up for failure, and we sort of defied the odds. We were given a last-minute notice, we hosted a meeting, and we had several hundred members of our community come out and share their thoughts and their concerns with our community. And there are a few people within the county that I really want to thank. We were given an opportunity to host the meeting. We were given less than 24 hours to accomplish that task. Jane Christensen, our amazing CEO, was able to quickly secure a location. Megan Wood, our clerk, moved heaven and earth to be able to make sure that we had everything we needed for that meeting. County Council was incredibly helpful, both in the committee meeting as well as in support of this meeting occurring. Our telecoms, our IT, Jeremy Kelly's team, were incredible. We had zero technological issues on our end, and as we saw, we had plenty on the other end with the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty. Department of State Hospitals' absence at that meeting spoke volumes. Their sort of carelessness with their technological issues was also spoke volumes as well. I want to share just a few of the numbers of what happened last week, of the people that turned out. We had 120 people from our community attend, both in Placer County and in Sacramento. It was an incredible turnout, and for those of you that were there, saw a packed house. We had over 10,000 views of the meeting online. People that took the time from a work day. It was not supposed to be a work day, it was supposed to be after work for people to attend the meeting. But the meeting was rigidly scheduled by the Department of State Hospitals despite our objection, but our community showed up. We had almost 5,000 views of the press conference that occurred afterward in the Cedra building, and to date we've received 256 letters from community members. 220 of those have been made part of our packet going into the September 1st hearing. So I want to provide just a little brief update about where we are and where we're headed. That committee meeting last week was supposed to sort of set the stage for our September 1st hearing in the Superior Court. We were supposed to be given an address 30 days ago so that we could be working on vetting that address and determining whether or not that placement was appropriate for Mr. Stevenson. We have objected, as has most of the community, but our office legally in the court proceedings have objected at every stage. Number one, to his release, and number two, most certainly, to his release on transient status. For those of you that aren't familiar, and for our community that isn't familiar with the SVP, sexually violent predator process, he has been determined by 2 doctors and a Superior Court judge to be released. We can't stop that at this point. We can't stop his release unless circumstances change. But what we can do is ensure that if he were to be released, it is under circumstances that guarantee the public safety and set Mr. Stevenson up for success rather than failure. And as most people have heard, the failure rate among transient release is about 50%. And that, to all of us, is an unreasonable risk to the danger and the safety to our community. So, what to expect on September 1st? We invite the community. It is an open court proceeding. The tenor is a little bit different than a community meeting. There's much more involvement in the community meeting than there is in a Superior Court hearing. The judge will hear from the parties. That means Mr. Stevenson's lawyer, those that are representing the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty, and the other party, the District Attorney's Office. The voice of the community will be heard and be provided to the Superior Court judge through our moving papers and through our attorney that will be representing the people of the state of California and the people of Placer County in that hearing. So the letters that we have received, those 220 letters that we have received, have been submitted to the court already. The judge is in possession of those. We'll read them, consider them. Realistically, what are we trying to accomplish on September 1st? Because of the failure of the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty to accomplish their mission, we are asking the judge to stop the transient release and to not go forward with it until the Department of State Hospitals does exactly what they're supposed to do, which is find secure housing, non-transient, stable housing that will allow for a security plan, if he were to be released, to be done flawlessly. That's our expectation. Because that can't be done based on what Liberty and the Department of State Hospitals have done thus far, the only option, in our opinion, is to stop this release. More time is going to be needed. There will need to be vetting of addresses. There will need to be vetting of security plans if and when Mr. Stevenson is released into this county. And frankly, the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty need to be called to account for what they have done thus far. Maybe they've made substantial progress in searching and exhausting all avenues in Placer County, but we don't know. And we have to know that before anyone can let Mr. Stevenson out, particularly the Superior Court judge. So we will be asking to stop the transient release at this point, asking for Mr. Stevenson to remain in the custody of the Department of State Hospitals until Liberty and the Department of State Hospitals can show us exactly what they've done. The law, as many of you that were at the hearing last week heard me during the question and answer period, the law changed as of January 1, and it changed the way in which sexually violent predators can be moved to other counties. Obviously, no one wants them in their community, but it has to be a fit. And if he doesn't fit in Placer County, then we need other alternatives. But the law to do that has gotten a little more stringent and requires much more involvement of both the District Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Office, County Council. We have to have active participation in the housing process, even though simultaneously we are objecting to his release in the first place. So it puts us in a little bit of a contradictory position, but we will follow the law. We have. Our representative has been actively participating in the process. They've just received no information. So my goal, our hope on September 1st is the court will require more time, will not release Mr. Stevenson, and we'll probably set it for another, hopefully, status conference where the judge can hear from Liberty and the Department of State Hospitals as to what their activity has been thus far and what they see going forward. We will continue to keep our community advised every step of the way, both through social media and through direct communications with our board and with our community. But that's our expectation, that's our hope, that we will not be dealing with the release of Mr. Stevenson on September 1st, given the violation of the notice requirements and, frankly, the lack of any sort of substantial movement in the right direction from the Department of State Hospitals and Liberty. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the SBP process that anyone might have. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to give us an opportunity to thank the community. It really was inspiring. We were told by some people that host these meetings that there's never really much turnout to these meetings. And I think we certainly proved them wrong, and we proved the resilience and passion on the part of our community members to keep our community the wonderful and beautiful place it is, and a safe place to live and raise our families. So thank you very much for the opportunity today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Morgan. Before I open it up to the board, I just want to thank you for holding the State Department of Hospitals accountable for their actions, and particularly for informing the members of the community just exactly how this process works and how we got here. And you answered so many questions, so that was really, really apparent, your passion and your leadership on this issue. As I said to some folk in the meeting when it was finished, it's the first time I've been in a meeting where everybody agreed. So.
I prefer those meetings.
Yeah, me too. So thank you again. I'll now turn it over to Supervisor Gore.
Thank you, Morgan. I appreciate the update, and I'm very much in support of this letter. I think I've said before that Mr. Stevenson was placed in my neighborhood originally back in 2014, I believe. And the one thing I did notice is that because the residents knew who he was and where he lived, there were eyes on. And every resident in our neighborhood knew who he was, and we were able to make sure that nothing happened, right? And there was plenty of uncomfortableness and fear in my neighborhood because of his past actions, but people had eyes on, and a transient status is just unacceptable in our community, because at least if people know where sexual predators live, then they're aware that people are watching, right? And we did not have problems with him in our neighborhood, and I don't want to see him have problems in any neighborhood, right? So I want to make sure that we know where he is released to, and I think that's so important that you and your team have been advocating, at least in that venue, right, and in that vein. So thank you so much, and I'm behind your efforts 100%.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the board's drafting of that letter. You hit all of the right points and echoed sort of what our arguments have been, and it is so refreshing to have the support of the board behind us in this effort, and I think it gives it some momentum and credibility behind our message. So I very much appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Supervisor Landon.
Thank you, Morgan. We just appreciate you so much, and I am fully in support of this letter, and I just wanted to express that I really appreciate your proactive communication and involvement on social media to make people aware. And also I'm very looking forward to Assemblyman Patterson's new legislation that he's bringing forward, and I'm glad that you're partnering with him on that to hopefully help fix this issue so it's not a concern in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Assemblymember Patterson wasted no time. He introduced a bill to prevent transient release, and we are in full support of it as it will now make its way through the legislative process. So thank you.
Supervisor Jones.
Good morning, Morgan. Thank you so much for your representation. I also sent another letter of my own additionally because I wanted to give a voice to the women that are served by Stand Up Placer who have suffered at the hands of people like this man. I know about 20 years ago we had a sexual offender that bought a big house in our neighborhood about 3 houses down, and the neighbors were so upset about it they protested in the streets, and eventually he sold his house and he moved. But no one wants to have this living in their neighborhood next door or anywhere, and so I'm in fully support of you as well. And thank you so much for leading the march.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for bringing up that point regarding Stand Up Placer. And as you saw at the meeting last week, there were a number of people who shared some of their experiences and sort of how triggering and upsetting just talking about this subject really is. And it takes immense bravery and courage to share your experiences, particularly to help solve a greater good. So it was much appreciated. Thank you.
Supervisor Gustafson.
I just wanted to echo what everyone said, and you started out today thanking so many people at the county, but we really have to thank you, the DA's office, and our law enforcement community for making the public aware of the risk involved and what we could do and how we could activate the community, and they came out because of your leadership. And thank you for all of your team's effort in getting that word out to our community.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We have an incredible team, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't thank our partners at the Sheriff's Office as well, who have been very outspoken. Sheriff Wu has been present at all of the same events and meetings, so I appreciate that. We have an incredible team, and it's so nice to do it with the support of our entire county. I think even our clerk recorder was at that meeting that day as well. So it really was a unifying event. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read this letter that we're going to send to Judge Horst. Let's read it into the record. Dear Judge Horst, as members of the Placer County Board of Supervisors, we are writing on behalf of our residents in opposition to the transient release of state-designated violent predator William Stevenson. Since your ruling on July 17, 2023, to grant Mr. Stevenson conditional transient release into Placer County, our offices have been overwhelmed with concerned residents, and rightly so. While we tried to navigate this ruling and what it means for our communities, we have found more questions than answers. The Department of State Hospitals and their private contractor, Liberty Healthcare, have seemed to be more interested in shielding information rather than providing information to community members and stakeholders. From seeking a protective order for our county, to holding last-minute community meetings to forcing closed sessions before receiving community feedback. DSH has only served to create more community concern surrounding the release of Mr. Stevenson. They also have taken every opportunity to remind community members this process started due to your ruling, not their inability to find housing. For the record, Mr. Stevenson has no place in Placer County. He has proven time and time again that he cannot be successful. With that in mind, he unequivocally does not have a place as a transient release in Placer County. Not only does transient release have a 50% failure rate, we also do not believe our county broadband infrastructure can support the 24-hour supervision Liberty Healthcare is promising our residents. While we know the law dictates his imminent release, we are also of the belief that policymakers were not envisioning transient release as an option during the creation of the SVP program in 1996. As we seek legislation clarifications to this question, we are asking that you reconsider transient release for Mr. Stevenson. When it comes to the safety of our residents, this consideration should be of the highest priority. And sincerely, it'll be signed by me. Thank you. And I'll take a motion to, I'll open up to public comment first before we approve this. Is there anyone from the public wish to address the board on this item? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
There is none? Okay. All righty, then I'll ask,
I'll move to approve.
And
All
I'll
right.
second.
okay, it's been moved by Supervisor Jones, seconded by Supervisor Gore to approve this letter to the Judge Horst. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, Morgan.
Thank you all very
All
much.
right,
Nice to
thanks
see
for
you.
the hard work you do. All right, now we'll move to our consent item, consent calendar. I've been asked to remove item 23C for discussion. You'll find that on page 625 of our agenda. Is there any other board members have anything want to pull for consent?
Mr. Chair, I would like to pull 14B.
14B? All righty, anyone else? Anyone in the audience wish to address the board on consent?
Good morning, Mike Garabedian. And the three items, 12A French Meadows, 22A Placer Vineyard, 22E, ABCDE Placer Vineyards, and 25B, B like in boy, property tax bills. Thank you.
Would you say 22 what? 22?
Start again, 12A
Yeah.
French Meadows, 22E
Okay,
Placer Vineyards, and finally 25B, property tax bills.
all right,
Thank you.
all righty. Okay, we'll move ahead with 23C for discussion. This is, who's here to present that?
Don't you want to take the rest of the consent calendar?
Oh, that's right. We need to move the rest, the remaining items on the consent.
I will
Vote to.
I will make a motion to the rest of the consent calendar. My goodness, I can't even say that.
Good job. And I'll second.
All right, it's moved by Supervisor Gore, second by Supervisor Gustafson to move the remaining items, to approve the remaining items on the consent calendar. Roll call, please.
Gore?
Aye.
Landon?
Yes.
Jones?
Aye.
Gustafson? Aye. Holmes?
Aye. All right, now we'll move to item 23C for discussion. This is a revenue sharing request from Housing Trust Placer for their Top Golf fundraiser as requested by the Board of Supervisors. Is there anyone online that wishes to address this item?
I do not see any hand raised, Chairman.
All righty. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address this item? I see none, so I'll bring it back for a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Gustafson, second by Supervisor Gore. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All righty, the item is moved. We'll now move to item 14B from Supervisor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 14B is a proclamation recognizing Veterans Day as November 11th, 2023. And the reason I feel honored to be able to read this proclamation is because, you know, I'm an Army wife of 20 years, and so the military families and military service members are near and dear to my heart. So it was worth bringing to the public and recognizing all the veterans. Proclamation recognizing Veterans Day. Whereas Placer County is very happy and honored to pay tribute to our distinguished veterans of the armed forces and active duty personnel for their service to our great nation. And whereas these brave men and women in military uniform serve our nation with honor and dedication in war, international conflicts, and during times of peace. And whereas our personal well-being, prosperity, and sense of peace is largely due to the sacrifices made by our men and women in the military. And whereas the courageous veterans in our community have earned our everlasting gratitude for serving our nation with devotion and love of country. And whereas the veterans and active duty personnel contribute to our local community, state, and nation by offering skills, education, leadership, maturity, and dedication learned in the armed forces. And whereas the families and friends of those missing armed service members continue to endure uncertainty of the fate of their loved ones unaccounted for. And whereas in celebration of this day, as we proudly wave our flags, watch holiday parades, and sing patriotic songs, let us stop for a few moments to remember the sacrifices that our men and women in the armed forces have made for us, so that we can enjoy the privileges and freedoms of our great nation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the above proclamation was duly passed by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Placer on behalf of the citizens of Placer County at a regular meeting held August 29th, 2023, recognizing Veterans Day, November 11, 2023, signed by the Board Chair, Supervisor Jim Holmes. And I want to just say congratulations to all those service members. And I also want to mention that yesterday, the supervisors, we were invited to the dedication of the new street that Roseville has named in honor of Sergeant Nicole G., who was killed when the terrorists attacked Afghanistan. It was 2 years ago, I believe, right? 2 years ago, August 25th. So this is in honor of her as well. So, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for letting me do that.
All right, thank you. Is there any comment on this item? Seeing none. Anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty. Did you want to make a motion? All right.
And I'll second.
Super.
Yes, second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Gore. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And now we'll move on to item 12A, found on page 475, is that it? Item 12A is being called. Mr. Garabedian, did you want to speak to it?
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, Placer County Taro, and Pacific to American Divide. This is the item on the French Meadows. It has to do with the contract, and I appreciate this opportunity to raise a question or two to the best that they could be answered right now. We're happy to meet with staff later. I'm curious about the status of French Meadows project overall. And I first learned internally about this on a forestry tour, sitting next to someone on a bus who was working on that project. This was quite a few years ago, several years back. So I'm interested, that project is necessary to help prevent fire prevention, as I think I mentioned at your last meeting, where it was just off the end of the King Fire back in 2014. So, and I'm curious about what further effort is going on to replace this contract if necessary and complete that project. So those are questions I hope to get answered here or later. Thank you.
Ms. Dimmer, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Carrie Timmer, your Regional Forest Health Coordinator. So the French Meadows project began in 2018, the work in the field, so we are currently in our 5th year of field work. We had hoped to have completed the project by roughly this time, but we have experienced a number of challenges related to extreme weather, extreme fire risk, not least of which was the mosquito fire last year, which closed down the entire project area for over a month. We now have our main road, our main ingress and egress road, Mosquito Ridge Road, is closed for the foreseeable future. So we've had to make many adaptations, let's say, to our work plan. We've also had some issues with our vendors, as is characterized here by today's item, in which costs have gone up by roughly 25% for fuel, for trucking, for personnel, insurances that we require our vendors to hold. All of those costs have increased, and in many cases we have contracts that date back to some of the earlier years of the project, and those contracts were bid at per acre rates or per mile rates in the case of road fixing, road repair, that just no longer hold given the increased costs. And so the combination, in this case at least for this vendor, the combination of the restricted work days, this particular vendor, I really was a bit heartbroken for them because they mobilized all of their crews and equipment like roughly the day before the mosquito fire broke out. So they spent $60,000 to get their personnel and equipment into the field. They got zero work done, and then they had to, I believe under sheriff escort, get their equipment and personnel out of there because of the danger of the fire. So, and then on top of that, in good faith, they were offering their equipment and operators to help with suppression, and their operators came down with COVID. So it's just been, a bit of a perfect storm in a negative sense of conditions and situations that have conspired to make it difficult for us to achieve our per work season acreage completion rate, and so we are indeed running behind in that regard, but we have all of the remaining work is currently rolled into a procurement that we'll be releasing in the next 2 weeks. We've been working with our procurement services department to get that together. We just had our annual retreat with the French Meadows Partnership last weekend, and we have come up with an adaptive plan where we will procure as much work as we can with the dollars that we have in hand, and then look at whatever work is remaining and determine how best to prioritize that, or perhaps determine that that work is not critical to achieving the goal of the project, in which case we may call the project done at that point. Or we may change the treatments in the plan to something less costly in order to get some additional benefit without having to come up with a whole lot of additional dollars. So there are many, many moving pieces. The partnership is well aware of the concerns of the public. Clearly, every time a fire breaks out, my heart stops, like, is this going to be the one? But we are doing our utmost to get this work done as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? I see none. Is there anyone else in the audience wish to address this item? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. The chair will entertain a motion.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to move the item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We'll now move to item 14B or what is it?
22E.
22E. Mr. Garabedian.
Thank you. That report was really comprehensive that we just had. On this project, it's very hard. I've read the staff report. It's very hard to understand. These sound like these are payments that have been made by the developer and or rather by the agency, and that may be. There's a possibility they may be returned if there's, depending on what Roseville decides to do with this factor here. There are about 8 pages of properties listed that where this fee has been charged, and there are about 3 more pages where it hasn't been charged. And so it's very hard to understand. There's a $3 million involved in here, and it sounds like I don't know how they can get out of, this sort of takes them out of, potentially out of a requirement. I'm afraid by trying to describe it, I'm probably just confusing myself and everybody else more. So I don't know if there's a magic way to present it or a way to present it so it's comprehensible, what's happening with this this project or this particular effort to affect the fees involved. So I hope
Alrighty.
there's some way to find out now, but like the last one, I'm willing to find out which staff to talk to understand this.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I'm going to read the request into the record. This is 22E, Placer Vineyards Property 1A Deferred Connection Fee Agreement with Lennar Homes of California, Inc. Item number 1, authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to execute with County Council and Risk Management concurrence a deferred connection fee agreement with Lennar Homes of California regarding Placer Vineyards Property 1A, and 2, determine the proposed action is not a project pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Sections 15378. Hello there. Would
Good
you
morning,
like to
Chair.
speak to this, please?
Good morning, Chair Holmes, board members, Jared Deck, Program Manager for Environmental Engineering. Hopefully I can clarify this a little bit just to help kind of the question that was just asked. So for the deferral of the fees, it'll only be future connection fees. We're currently working with SPWA, South Placer Waste Management Authority, to understand if there should be a reduction in fees. And so during that time period, while we're doing that investigation, we're willing to enter into this deferral agreement for a 1-year period to defer those fees. So the previous fees, which are already paid, the $3 million, which was mentioned, those are actually already with SPWA. And so unless they make a finding saying that they will backdate that and return those payments, that's actually staying with them. So that won't be returned unless they make a finding saying, yes, we will backdate that and actually provide that back to the county. So currently that's just staying with them, and future fees will be deferred based off of what we're doing in other areas, which is the 0.714. And so they'll be paying a portion of the fee as per that. And so after the findings, if SPWA defines this as everybody should be paying 1 EDU, 1 equivalent dwelling unit, then Lennar will have to pay the full amount at that point within 30 days. And so this is just a deferral while we're investigating it. At that point, if it's defined as that, then they'll pay the amount that's kind of the balance that is due. If not, then we will provide them with the actual reduced fee. So hopefully that clarifies it.
Yeah, clarifies it for me. Is any board member have a question, comment? Is there anyone else in the audience who wish to address this item? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty.
I'll move approval of the item.
Okay, it's been moved by Supervisor Gore and seconded by Supervisor Gustafson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you, that item is moved. Now we'll move to item 25B, is that correct? 23C?
We did 23C first.
Where are we?
We're on 25B. You're correct.
25B? That's the one I said?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct.
25B is insertion of Placer County General Plan Update Flyer in 2023 property tax bills. 1, authorize inclusion of an informational flyer regarding the Placer County General Plan update in the 2023-2024 secure property bills. Mr. Garabedian.
Good morning, Mike Garabedian. Thank you for the last item and this one. Appreciate taking your time for these clarifications. In this case, I have a concern about sending notice to everybody getting a property tax bill, which of course is bringing them a bill, and then in that they're going to be told about the general plan revision coming up as I understand it. So this would be quite a bit of news to people finding out they're going to owe money, and it sort of reminds me of some of the county efforts to reach out to landowners who might want to develop. I'm not saying that's the intention of this, but the question is, how do you do something like this that's just going to landowners when the communities in general, for instance, as I understand the proposal for the changes that are being considered by the county, this has to do with the elimination of the municipal advisory council. So giving notice to a group to the owners, which is a good idea, but also the larger community who don't get the notice and don't know there's an incentive to their neighbors, like have been done in a couple other projects recently, to develop, even if that's not the intention. So I wanted to bring that concern about this and suggest that what is actually in that notice is going to be really important, and it probably needs to go out at the same time there's wider notice in the community too. And who knows, this may be part of your efforts, but I think it's really critical because we are on such a major development process in the county that it's hard to see how the integrity of existing communities is going to be maintained with these properties interspersed in them being developed, and here's a new incentive, perhaps. So it's really great to have an opportunity to talk to you about this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that the Placer County Board of Supervisors wants to do everything we can in the matter of a transparency about what we're doing, and we're trying to get as much information out to everybody as possible, and this is a very economical way to do that. And the county treasurer is here. If you wish to come forward and make a few comments, we would appreciate it.
Good morning, Chair, Honorable Board, Tristan Butcher, Placer County Treasurer, Tax Collector. This isn't something new. This is something that we regularly do. Typically, CEO's office will reach out, or other departments or offices within the county will reach out to our office when we're getting ready to send property tax bills. We usually prioritize to see which ones are going to fit with the objective of sending a property tax bill out to the different residents. And we've done in the past the One Pill to Kill. I know you guys remember that campaign from the DA, very important topic at the time. This is just another avenue as a way to advertise to the public and to reach out to the public and get their involvement in the county. With that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
The county executive officer has a question or a comment.
Thank you, Board Chair, and thank you to Tristan, our treasurer tax collector, our friendly neighborhood treasurer tax collector, for his willingness to use this avenue to get the word out on important issues. As you mentioned, in the past, we've used property tax bills, which have a wide distribution, to advise on One Pill Can Kill, on redistricting, and other issues of countywide import. So thank you for your cooperation in getting the word out.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the audience? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
The item has been moved by Supervisor Gustafson, seconded by Supervisor Jones. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Now, we will move to public comment. Persons may address the board on items not on this agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes per person, since the time allocated for public comment is 15 minutes. If all comments cannot be heard within the 15-minute time limit, the public comment period will be taken up at the end of the regular session. The board is not permitted to take any action on items addressed under public comment. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Board. My name's Richard Lingenjo, Lingensjo. There's a educated majority of the board who support our thorium electric project, and thank you. Safe, continuous, no batteries, perpetual electrical grid power. Not an existing dangerous water-cooled nuclear power system. Representative Kevin Kiley told me in person on 2 separate occasions he's interested in new generation electrical power. However, I know this as just my opportunity to make this statement. No implications for the board. but in person, he's interested in a new generation electrical power. However, his office has failed to cooperate in our meeting. And I have an update here on the project, and I'd like to pass a copy out to each of the board members, please. Thanks. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Richard. Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to address the board on public comment? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
All righty, thank you. And then we will close public comment and move on to our board member and county executive reports. Any Supervisor Gustafson?
Yes, I wanted to give a couple of reports to the rest of the board. We did have our town hall, Eastern Town Hall on evacuation a week and a half ago. We had 230 attendees, 150 virtually, and 80 in the room. And I wanted to give a big expression of gratitude to OES, Placer County Sheriff, and CAL FIRE, and our local fire chiefs in the area for attending and helping field questions of the public. And also, Jeremy, you're back there running IT today, but again, your help in IT so that we could have a seamless town hall and entertain those comments and questions and concerns. Obviously, in light of the tragedies in Lahaina, people attended and were very concerned about evacuation in the event of a fast-moving fire. Then the following week, last week, TRPA Governing Board met, and after their meeting in Kings Beach, we did a tour, walking tour with the North Tahoe Business Association's Economic Vitality Committee, looking at some of the projects, especially the Placer County redevelopment, former redevelopment lands, the Kings Beach Center project, as well as many of the other dilapidated and rundown buildings that are sitting now vacant and boarded up in the Kings Beach area, and talked about the need for economic reinvestment in that community. So I thought it was an excellent tour. Some of our governing board members are from other parts of the state. They fly in. One comes in from, the presidential appointee comes in from Washington, D.C., and so to get them out on the ground and look at what we're dealing with in our community, especially in Placer County, was a great amount of honor for us, as well as an opportunity that hopefully they'll use in their wisdom and future decision-making. And then finally, last Friday, the League to Save Lake Tahoe and TRPA jointly had a board-to-board tour on the lake of the aquatic invasives and enforcement issues that are being dealt with on the lake. The League to Save Lake Tahoe hosted then a lunch between the two boards to discuss some of the critical issues on transportation, parking, aquatic invasives, and lake clarity. So it was a good discussion, and for myself, not having spent a lot of time at South Shore, to see the number of weeds, aquatic invasives in the Keys Marina, and the efforts that are ongoing with technology, bubble curtains and other things to try to protect the lake is huge investment. But certainly helping our North Shore communities, because they're keeping those aquatic invasives limited to their spread. So just wanted to give you those reports. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Any other board members have a report? I see none. Does the county executive officer have a report? I see none. Thank you. We'll now move to a department head item. This is item 5, Placer County Sheriff, ATIMS Jail Management System. Mr. Rogers.
Good morning, Chair, members of
Morning.
the board, Mrs. Christensen, Mr. Schwab, Jerry Rogers with the Placer County Sheriff's Office, and with me today I have Division Commander of the Auburn Jail, Captain Jeff Swearingen, and IT Manager Jerry Silva. For the action requested, please approve an agreement with ATIMS, a division of the Act One Group, Inc. of Daytona Beach, Florida, for a new jail management system in the amount of $1,568,800, and authorize the purchasing manager to sign all required documents, including change orders not to exceed $100,000, subject to the departmental concurrence and available funding. So the Sheriff's Office Correction and Detention Division has seen major changes with the incarceration shifts legislated in AB 109 and Proposition 47, along with operational changes related to the opening of the South Placer Jail in 2014. To better accommodate these changes, the Corrections and Detentions Division is in need of a new jail management system built on modern technology and able to provide a solid offender management solution with increased functionality and flexibility in adapting to the dynamic needs of incarceration and rehabilitation in California. The Sheriff's Correction and Detention Division is currently utilizing the Tiburon Jail Management System from Central Square, Inc. The JMS component of the Tiburon solution was originally implemented in 1999, upgraded in 2002, and again in 2005. Since the last upgrade, the Tiburon JMS product has not kept adequate pace and is now unable to accommodate substantial changes in the incarceration process. The gap between the product's capabilities and current needs of the Corrections Division is significant. Over the last 18 months, Sheriff's Office staff and management have met routinely to evaluate alternative systems to best meet defined needs of the Corrections Division. Part of this process also included a 6-week proof of concept project from where ATIMS provided a functional system of the Sheriff's Office staff to review hands-on the booking, sentencing, and classification modules. As a result of this analysis, the Sheriff's Office has selected a preferred jail management system from ATIMS, Inc. The total cost of this contract is $1,568,800, and funding for this contract is included in Cost Center 20004, the Sheriff's Administration, for fiscal year 2023-2024. And there's no impact to the general fund. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Rogers? Supervisor Landon?
I just have one quick question. What's the current, or what were you previously paying for the Tiburon system? Do you know?
The annual maintenance of that system is around, of that component of the system is around $75,000 a year.
Okay, thanks.
And the 1.5 is over I believe, 5-year contract. Yeah, that's correct.
Alrighty, Supervisor Gustafson.
Just an observation through these software changes. These companies come in, you get on their system, and then over time, this same transition occurs, and we have to invest in a new system. And it sounds like this is a well-vetted program, and that we can count on it for a number of years, hopefully beyond the 5 even, so that, because once you get experience, as we all know, as we get older, it's harder to change our software programs and our apps and become up to speed with it. So, yeah, more an observation than a question, but you feel confident with this system that they're going to invest in it.
Yeah, this system we started using, I think, 2 years into my employment. It's my 5th time through the system, so we've definitely milked it for all it's worth, but the best analogy I could use is our current JMS would be the equivalent of a bag cell phone from 1988, whereas ATIMS is a little more of a smartphone. So
some of the people up here didn't have those.
My dad did.
I might have.
Yeah, so it is definitely a pretty robust system. We've been having regional meetings with Sacramento County executive and command staff, and this is one of the items that we've been bringing up on a monthly basis with them. And so we've learned from some of the trip lines that they've fallen over that will help us avoid some of those, but they've gone live with that system and they seem pretty happy with it.
Great. Thank you.
Alrighty, any other questions, comments from board members? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address us on this item? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
Alrighty, I'll bring it back to the board for approval.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Supervisor Jones and seconded by Supervisor Landon to move the item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you.
You can go back to your neighborhood.
Stick around for a beat.
Oh, yeah, 5B while you're here. And we got, I'm sorry. This is a contract amendment with Nevada County for booking and jail services.
Yes, good morning, members of the board. Jared Rogers again with the Placer County Sheriff's Office, and with me today I have Lieutenant Don Nevins. We come to the board asking your approval of an amendment to the contract between Placer County Sheriff's Office and Nevada County Sheriff's Office for booking and jail services, adjusting the amount to $517,727 for the term of July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. This increase represents a 3% or $15,079 over the previous year. Let's see here. Funding for this agreement is included in the Sheriff's Office fiscal year 23-24 budget. There is no impact to the general fund. And with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Alrighty. Any questions from board members? Supervisor Gore.
Just one comment. I really appreciate items like this when we are partnering with other counties and sharing services. And we do that, like we're doing that with the morgue, right? And allowing other counties to utilize our services in the morgue. And for us to be able to utilize the sheriff's services in Nevada County, I just think, once again, it's a way that we can work with other jurisdictions to streamline processes and save funds. So appreciate this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other questions from board members? I see none. Anyone in the audience wish to address this item? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All right, we'll bring it back to the chair.
I'll move approval.
And I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Gusson, second by Supervisor Jones. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? The item is moved. Thank you.
All right. I'll go back to my neighborhood now.
Now, we'll move to item 6 on our department items, Community Development Resource Agency. This is item A, Koshman Ranch and Lincoln Ranch Agricultural Conservation Easement Use of Funds Agreement, Supervisorial District 2. Oh, Callie.
All right, good morning, Supervisors. Chairman Holmes, Karen Schwab, and CEO Christensen. My name is Callie Kettinger-Cecil, Senior Planner with the Placer County Planning Services Division. I will also be presenting today with my colleague Jeremy Sutter from the Placer County Conservation Program. The item before you this morning is a execution of 2 use of funds agreements to support Placer Land Trust acquisition over 2 agricultural conservation easements in unincorporated Lincoln. Specifically, we are requesting $483,000 and $427,000 in order to support the acquisition. First, I will get into the background, then we will discuss the details of the acquisition. We will also provide some information about the various open space programs that are within the county, and then we will get to our action request. The 2 properties include the 595-acre Koshman Ranch and the 574-acre Lincoln Ranch. The properties are located in the unincorporated area of Lincoln between Nicholas Road at the north, which is over here, and East Catlett at the south. Koshman is indicated by this X here, and Lincoln Ranch is immediately to the south here. Koshman Ranch, shown on the left, supports 595 acres, including 62 acres in rice and 492 acres in almonds. Markham Ravine crosses a portion of the northern area, and the Markham Ravine Mitigation Bank is adjacent to the west. The Lincoln Ranch site is shown on the right here. It is 574 acres with 92 acres in rice and 442 acres in almonds, which are in the process of being certified for organic. The chevron-shaped piece of the property is currently encumbered with an existing Swainson's Hawk conservation easement, and Auburn Ravine crosses the northern portion of the site. Next, I will hand it over to Jeremy for a little bit of the acquisition background.
Good morning, Board. Thank you very much for letting us talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Board. Thank you for letting us present this to you today. Basically, this is a piece of an opportunity that's put together by Placer Land Trust. And what we're looking for is, it's two pieces of property that they're asking for an agricultural easement over it, and they're purchasing an agricultural easement. They have acquired, it's been appraised at a little bit over $8 million in total, and they've acquired grant funding through the SALT program for $6.13 million. And they're asking for, and the landowner is contributing approximately $1,300,000 to the deal, and they're asking the county to contribute about approximately 11% of the overall cost of the land for a total of $910,000, and that's split across both properties, as Callie mentioned before.
And a little bit more information about the Department of Conservation's program. The Department of Conservation is a state agency, and they have a number of grant programs, including the Sustainable Agricultural, I'm sorry, not the Sustainable Agricultural, yes it is, Lands Conservation Program. And this program is intended to ensure that properties remain in agriculture in perpetuity. The county does have other lands that have been funded through this program, as well as Placer Land Trust. They have also received funding in order to secure acquisitions through that program. And then I'll hand it back over to Jeremy for a little bit of the acquisition funding sources.
So part of what's happening is there are some shared goals that both the SALC has, Placer Land Trust, and the county as well through the Placer Legacy, and here we're able to leverage the funds in terms of what the grant funds that PLT can get and what the county can provide. And so here is the breakdown of the overall deal structure, which is a little bit over $6 million contributed by the SALT grant, and then the landowner, AKT, is contributing the $1.3 million, and then the 11% contributed by the county. So roughly what that breaks down to is the appraised value of the project, of the overall property, is a little bit over $7,000 per acre is the total purchase price, and the county is contributing roughly $778 per acre for 1,000 acres. And that's the way that we're able to use these leveraging systems with all the similar interests by the different parties to acquire agricultural easements such as this to further the goals of Placer Legacy in the county.
So what is the difference between the PCCP, Placer Legacy, and the Placer Land Trust? I know that they have similar names and it can get confusing very quickly, so we thought it would be a good idea to provide just some information about what these various groups are, what their goals are, and how they all kind of play together in the conservation sandbox. So Legacy is the General Plan's Land Use and Natural Resources umbrella policy, and the PCCP is one of its implementing programs. The PCCP is a regulatory and permitting program that is specific to Western Placer County, and acquisitions are funded through payment of land conservation fees as well as grants. Public access is not a priority for the PCCP acquisitions. The priority there is habitat conservation and protection. And the PCCP is staffed through people in the Placer Conservation Authority, which is a joint powers authority that is separate from county staff. Placer Legacy, as I mentioned, it is a piece of the general plan. It is a county-wide open space and agricultural conservation program. So PCCP is limited to Western Placer County. It's generally those lands that are west of Highway 49, where Placer Legacy is a county-wide program. There is public access on some sites, and Placer Legacy is a multidisciplinary, county-staffed committee program. So there is staff from the Planning Services Division, staff from Parks, as well as PCCP, facilities, the Agricultural Commissioner, and the CEO's office. Placer Land Trust is a private nonprofit, and their acquisitions are not limited to the confines of Placer County. For example, they have an acquisition in El Dorado County, which is the Wakamatsu Tea Farm. Their acquisitions are funded through donations and grant funding, and many of their acquisitions do have public access. And their staff is their own staff, as well as they have many volunteers who assist with their operations. So those are some of the key differences of those groups. And some other things that are important to note is that both Legacy and the Placer County Conservation Plan are designed to be implemented together in a synergistic fashion. And the PCCP really opens the door to significant non-mitigation conservation funding opportunities, which is important because that is how funds are leveraged through various funds, including the Wildlife Conservation Board's funding for the Natural Community Conservation Programs, as well as Federal Endangered Species Act Section 6 funding opportunities. One of these opportunities that has been funded through those programs here in Placer County is the $7 million Red Wing South acquisition. So PCCP, Legacy, and Placer Land Trust have a lot of overlap, but they do have very separate and distinct goals, objectives, as well as where they're located and how they function. So I'll hand it back over to Jeremy.
So here's a slide just showing basically over the last 20 years some of the ways that the funds have been leveraged. And the county has contributed about $28 million compared to the $58 million received from grants and private funding and other partners. So roughly, significant amount of savings in terms of the land that's acquired.
Thank you.
And then this, as Callie mentioned, here's the Red Wing acquisition. It was roughly a $6 million acquisition, and the county contributed through PCCP $444,000. And in here in Koshman and the Lincoln Ranch project is also right below that with roughly over an $8 million acquisition and contributing only $910,000.
So the requested actions are to adopt a resolution authorizing the Community Development Resource Agency Director or designee to execute 2 use of funds agreements with Placer Land Trust to provide $483,000 and $427,000 towards the Placer Land Trust acquisition of 2 agricultural conservation easements over 2 properties consisting of 595 acres, which is Koshman Ranch, and 574 acres, which is Lincoln Ranch. In unincorporated Lincoln, and to take all actions necessary to facilitate the transactions and implement the provisions of the agreement subject to County Council and Risk Management concurrence. We are also requesting that your board approve a fiscal year 2023-24 budget amendment for AM-00880 for CC10023 open space in the amount of $910,000 and cancel open space fund reserves in the same amount. And 3, determine that the proposed action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15137 and 15325. With that, Jeremy and myself are available for any questions you may have. Greg McKenzie, the PCCP director, is also here, and we also have Jeff Darlington from the Placer Land Trust, should there be any questions for anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Callie. Jeremy, I don't think we got your last name for the record.
Jeremy Sutter.
Sir, I knew that, but just for the record. All right, any comments, questions from board members? Supervisor Landon.
Really just a comment. I just want to say it's such a great opportunity and really exciting to see other funds coming for almost 90% of the project, and us having to come up with a small 10% match to me is a great balance. So I just wanted to give that comment.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Gustafson.
Similarly, it's not a question, it is a comment that I think our residents of Placer County should be so proud of the open space that we're dedicating and providing public access on, conservation easements on, protect our communities. We often hear the criticism of growth and development, and we should all be just so happy about the opportunities that you've all taken advantage of to get us here to make sure we're conserving lands as well. Thank you.
Placer Legacy was formed in 2000, I believe. It went to a vote of the people. They overwhelmingly approved moving forward. Unfortunately, they didn't approve any extra sales tax over there. But it's been very, very successful now that's 24 years later, so it's been a very successful program. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address this item? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty, thank you. Then I'll bring it back to the board for action.
I will move approval.
All righty. The item has been moved by Supervisor Landon and seconded by Supervisor Gustafson. A roll call vote, please.
Landon?
Yes.
Jones?
Aye.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Core?
Aye.
Holmes?
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for, the item is moved. Thank you, Mr. Sutter. Now, we will move to our 10 o'clock timed item. This is item 2A. It's found on page number 3. The Arts Council of Placer County Contract for Professional Services. Gloria Stearns presenting. Good morning, Gloria.
Well, thank you, Board. I'm glad to be here, and it's great to see all of you today. And we get to talk about a fantastic topic, the arts in Placer County. So that's always a good day, right? With me today for the presentation, I'm going to have some assistance from Darcy Frank and Barbara Burge of the ACPC. And I see some of the board members are here, and they'll probably speak to you during public comment, so we can look forward to that. But I wanted to get started with just a brief introduction with a quote from Richard Florida, one of my favorite economic development professionals. Human creativity is the ultimate economic resource. And I put a bunch of music in there for you because this music features some grace notes. So where you see some of those notes that have a little slash through them, those are called grace notes. And a grace note is a note that you sort of hit before you get to where you're headed to. And that's going to become important here because we're going to be doing a grace note period with the ACPC in this contract. So in our case here, our team, my economic development team, worked with the ACPC group, and we took a look at some of the issues that they had with their finances, revenue streams, staffing, and capacity building. And we said, let's take a grace note period and see what we need to do to make things just a little bit better before we hit where we're absolutely headed. So we're taking a period of a timeout, and you'll notice that in the staff report, that they will not be issuing grants until January 1st of 2024. And that's intentional, so that way we can let them build some capacity in different ways. We're going to start by looking at fiscal sustainability. So my team has already been working with them on finding grants and identifying opportunities for them to pursue additional funding, so that way their finances get a little more in better shape, and they're ready to handle all of the grants that we expect them to do in the next year, the next calendar year, and then the upcoming fiscal year. We also have been working with them on diversifying the revenue stream. They have been pursuing grants on their own, but our team has been looking for grants through foundations as well as professional or public ones, so that way they can find state and federal grant opportunities as well as foundation grants. And our team is happy to do that with people. We do that quite often now, in fact, that I have a new team. So that's kind of handy. They're also establishing a grants calendar, so that way they'll know which grants are regularly applied during certain months. They can identify, as they go through the calendar year, how to find the best funding opportunities by each month, and I think that will set them up for some good funding strengths. Internal controls are important, as we all know. Our auditor loves those things, and that will help them become more accountable with all of the record keeping that they need to do for all of the different grants. And that way, when our auditor comes to economic development, we can work with ACPC, and we can stand up to all of our auditing pressures that we might face and be ready. And then last but not least, capacity building. We know that ACPC had some staffing turnover, and so we wanted to make sure that the new staff was ready to take on the challenges going forward with all the grant applications that they receive, as well as those that they will be pursuing for their own funding. So that's why you're going to see that this is a grace note contract, in my opinion, my words, as a musician. And we're offering them a one-year contract for this period, so that way they can build their capacity and they can work on getting to the right note at the right time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy so she can talk to you about her efforts. Oh, Barbara, sorry, she's next.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Barbara Burge, currently the Managing Director of the Arts Council of Placer County, and we'd like to thank the board and Placer County for all of their support. I've been with them. I term out from the board next March, so I've been with them for 6 years. But previous to that, I was with the Art League of Lincoln and Lincoln I actually was a charter member. And I cannot elaborate because Darcy will get mad at me. So it's 40 years was our celebration this year. It was wonderful. We acknowledged all of the icons in Placer County, and that didn't mean just artists. It meant volunteers. It meant people who did programming and economic development. It was a huge success based on the thank you emails we received. So I'd like to thank all of you who were there, and thank you for those who couldn't be there, but it would have been nice. I think we had a great time. Thank you. All right, let me go quickly because she's going to get after me. I'm going to introduce Darcy Frank, who is going to present our annual report with a focus on the cultural mapping study. We did 3 studies, cultural mapping study, AEP 6. We have had a very busy year and a half with surveys, et cetera. Without Darcy, it wouldn't have happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy.
Good morning, Supervisors. As you know, we are a state and local partner for California Arts Council, and we're your local partner under the Economic Development Division. We work to uplift and support the arts and their impact on our economy, as well as their positive impact on our quality of life and our culture here. Is this the magic? There's Barbara's slide. And thanks again, Barbara, for the nice introduction. Today, we'll briefly share with you what you have in more detail in your annual report. And this list reflects most of what the ACPT does, but not all. So let's dive in. And do enjoy the artwork featuring Placer County artists as we go through these slides. We had an amazing group of grant recipients, including Access Dance, Auburn Symphony for youth music programs, and On Native Ground, whose message and art is really being recognized. Their film, A Gift of Fear, was locally produced with local tribal members, and it's winning awards from San Francisco to Chicago and Milan. And it's bringing phenomenal attention and awareness to the number of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And you can read all about it in your arts and culture publication as well. Full stories in there. As Barbara mentioned, thanks to you, we partnered with the National Americans for the Arts, and with your support, we conducted the American Economic Prosperity 6 study. It measured the economic impact of the arts. It took place in 3 components: the Audience Intercept Survey, the Nonprofit Organizational Survey, and communications to reinforce and promote that arts are businesses. We employ people locally, we purchase goods and services, and we attract tourists. The national data will be released October 12th, and especially exciting because we are participants and partners in this, we'll have local Placer County specific data that we can share with you. Thanks to Patrick Storm, who's also here today, the ACPC also worked in partnership with the California Creative Corps and supported Nevada County Arts Council. This resulted in, as you know, was an unprecedented amount of funding statewide and for the upstate Northern California area. With Patrick and the ACP's involvement, resulted in over $265,000 in grants at work in Placer County. Now, a feature part of our presentation that we're very passionate about is our cultural mapping study. First of all, compliments and thanks to all of you and Placer County for working with us and investing in this project. We're actually ahead of the curve of other state and local partners, and this data that we collect in this project being completed is really crucial to working with national and state agencies and securing additional funding. So we'll touch on just a few of the highlights today, but hope you've received the full reports earlier this year. And in your packets today, we have the latest copy of Phase 2 and the executive summary from Phase 1. I'll send you the links following this presentation today as well, so if you want to review. But there's really impactful information in the data we collected from county residents. Phase 1 focused on the research. 3 areas of importance emerged from our residents, and they've consolidated them into the categories of equity, workforce development, both for arts and arts organizations, and youth engagement. So now, since we've heard from residents, heard from everyone, these will also be the priorities going forward for Arts Council of Placer County. With the research, they tackled it from three angles: one-on-one interviews, countywide surveys, which thanks to all of you, you'd completed a year ago, and focus groups with community leaders. Excuse me. One statement from a one-on-one interview was, excuse me. Drinks. Would folks see themselves represented in art, they feel connected to that community, and they want to cultivate it and spend money. So we want to take this information that we've gotten, and it's very impactful, and now turn it into action and make improvements. We realize from this research that we fall short, and there are areas where we need to improve in supporting people of color and beginning to build a more inclusive arts community. A snapshot from the public surveys. Native Americans were identified by residents as an undervalued organization in Placer County, and one that they would like to see supported more. When asked about favorite art and culture experiences, residents told us festivals, street fairs, events are their favorite, and 56.4% advocate for arts and education in our schools. In Phase 2 of the cultural mapping study, we asked our consultant to take us from data and help us turn it into action, give us recommendations and guide us on where we can go next. So we now have a 5-year plan for the Arts Council of Placer County, thanks to this cultural mapping study, and it included a daily plan for our arts and culture organizations within the county, and we'll turn these findings into action. Along with recommendations, it's a long to-do list for us, but we're up for the challenge. The first portion are key recommendations specifically for us, kind of as Gloria had alluded to, operations capacity, how we can expand it, how we can increase our awareness, and programming and engagement. And just to give you a feel for some of the examples that are in there, one is to hire a grants coordinator so we can bring in more dollars. Recruit board members from our Placer County Education District to be on our board. We would love that collaboration. To increase awareness of ACPC is get Arts Council news included in your county newsletter. Finally, programming and engagement. We can encourage cities and towns to acknowledge Arts and Culture Month, following the lead of Placer County. Thank you for designating November as our Arts and Culture Month, and we'll be celebrating that soon. We're already working with our nonprofit organizations and sharing out this study and this information, and we're encouraging strategies for inclusive engagement. You heard from Mary Tess Mayhall a couple of weeks ago from Blue Line Arts, and we're just delighted that they're already utilizing this study and working on these strategies. Just to give you a glimpse of the types of recommendations included under equity, we have promoting programs and events. You have many organizations who will promote an activity to their own members, but don't get it out to the broader community. So we can support them and help them in getting that information out. And we can host free online arts micro movie series. Our consultant was really great at looking at programs across the nation and finding things we can replicate, because it's a great way to get started. Advocate for City Hall galleries in every district, and to engage youth, organize a congressional arts competition. In addition to the recommendations for Phase 2, we also got the recommendations that I mentioned for arts and culture organizations to use. There's a daily plan that outlines steps. We'll hold a workshop again in September with them in attendance and share what Blue Line's doing and help them take steps to move forward in improving in these areas. We have a big to-do list, and to take on the cultural mapping study and turn it into action. Following the guidance of the California Arts Council Strategic Framework, we know building equity takes effort and intention, and we're excited about growing and building a more inclusive arts community, and we're committed to doing that hard work and make that happen. For the final, so thank you, and I look forward to getting any further questions on this topic alone. We could spend an hour, but I hope a brief overview is helpful today. For the final portion of our last couple of slides, I'm going to introduce Patrick Storm, who is our marketing and media guru.
Morning, Patrick.
Hello, my name is Patrick Storm. Finally, other roles of the ACPC this past year were Poetry Out Loud. As the California Arts Council partner, we continue to organize this program for high school students. Unfortunately, Placer County did not win the statewide competition, but we were very proud of her nonetheless. We're making connections with our monthly newsletter with emails, which have a 40% open rate, and the industry standard is only 12, so we're very proud of that. Our call to artists and more, we're getting artists to work. One success story was when the superintendent of Colfax contacted us, and we put out calls to artists, and now artists are employed, and students in Colfax are benefiting from new after-school art programs. Promoting the arts is a big part of our scope of work. Last year we had 33 earned media interviews at the local networks, and more great stats on our social media, reaching over 75,000 people organically, so unpaid social media promotions. Please let us know how we can do better for you. Please let us know, reach out. If you have ideas, please share them with us. These are the emails that anyone can reach us by. We very much appreciate that. And in conclusion, we want to express our gratitude. We are proud to be your partner and to be your connection to the arts. We are also honored to serve with the voice of the artists and arts and culture organizations in Placer County. Thank you for being an engaged and proactive Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a slide we're all familiar with, the action requested. So today, our request for you is to approve and authorize the county executive officer or designee to execute a contract with the Arts Council of Placer County in an amount not to exceed $248,100 for the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, for ACPC to manage a grant program and to promote and support participation in the arts and humanities within Placer County, and also to adopt a resolution designating ACPC as Placer County's state local partner, PSLP, in the California Arts Council's SLP program, allowing ACPC to pursue grant funding. Thank you.
All right, thank you. First of all, let me say, in my many years on the Board of Supervisors, the work that has been done over the years has been impressive, and you really come to a place where the outreach and rewarding people with artistic talents is very, very appreciated. I was so pleased to be at the celebration, the 40-year celebration, with all the longer-term artists in Placer County, but many of the younger artists there. So your program is working to keep those young people invested and know that they're encouraged to keep contributing. Some of the artists there that I've known very well, Stan Padilla is one, J. Randall Smith, and of course, Joanne Neft, who, if you walk in her house, it's like walking through an art museum. And so she's a very big promoter. So I want to shout those three out. There are several others that really, really stand out in Placer County. So I just want to give you high regards as far as the work you've done to bring this Arts Council forward. And now I'll turn to Supervisor Gore.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Great to hear about all the good work. One thing I just love, and so I enjoyed seeing it, is the art galleries in city halls. In Roseville, they partner, I believe, with the Blue Line Arts Gallery, and every month when I would walk in there was new art. And it was terrific because we got to see different artists. Actually, the Chamber of Commerce in Roseville has the same program. And so every time I go in there for a meeting, I get to see somebody else's artwork, which is fabulous. So thanks for promoting that. I do have a question about fiscal sustainability. And Gloria, thank you just for you sharing about the need to sort of not so much reset, but really figure out sort of next steps, right? And in a pause. And one of the questions I had as I was reading through the packet this weekend was, what percentage of the income for the Placer Arts organization comes from this direct funding versus additional funds that they get from donations, et cetera? And I know they're probably looking to grow that, right? But I just want to get a sense of that.
Yeah, right now, it's rather uneven pie chart, which makes it a little risky. So they're probably over 90% funded by the county. And when we saw that, we wanted to break that number down and start reducing that. I don't believe in having all your eggs in one basket. And so that's why they're applying for state funding as well. We're talking to them about growing fundraising and fundraising efforts. And so that way they can reach out and do more direct outreach, as well as all the different grant schedules and working with their staff closely. We're working now almost every other week with their brand new grant person. So we're really helping them to get that pie chart to be a little more even.
Well, and just as we saw earlier today, right, the funds that we can get from the federal and state government on land conservation and preservation, terrific. And the focus on the arts in the state and nationally, there are dollars out there. So I really appreciate the fact that you're working with them to help them find grants, and then it sounds like you all are looking to hire a grant coordinator, writer, so that you can actually access those dollars that are out there. And they're out there, it's just a matter of finding them. So thank you for that work, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Landon.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of the great work you all are doing. It's kind of fitting it came today because I'm a budding artist and I'm dropping off my drawings at the fair today. So, but thank you so much. And I really love the work that you're doing in the youth area, as Supervisor Holmes brought up. I think with the mental health struggles that we see in our youth today, I think it's just so vital that they have outlets like art, regardless of what form they're using. So I just really appreciate that that's a focus that you guys are looking at and trying to get more engaged in. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Jones.
Good morning. I wanted to thank you for the invitation to the Board of Supervisors to join you in your 40th anniversary celebration. Yes, I wear my little pin here. That group of artists and volunteers that you acknowledged the other day, they're a wonderful, warm, happy, very accomplished group of people. And it was amazing to see, and I was really very flattered that you asked us to present the awards to them and acknowledge them. Thank you for that invitation.
Thank you, Supervisor. Anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
Alrighty, then we will enthusiastically bring it back to the board for.
I move that we approve.
It's motion by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Gustafson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you so much for your presentation. You betcha. It's at 10:30. Oh, so close. We've got about 30 seconds before our 10:30. Oh.
They've asked for a picture, we're sorry. 30 seconds we need. Perfect.
Good, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alrighty, we're ready for our 10:30 timed item. Treasurer Tax Collector Amendment to the North Lake Tahoe Public Financing Authority Joint Powers Agreement designating certain officers of the authority.
Good morning,
Mr.
Chair.
Treasurer.
Honorable Board, Tristan Butcher, Placer County Treasurer, Tax Collector. Today I have for your consideration the resolution to approve the amendment of the North Lake Tahoe Public Financing Authority. Just a little background on the authority. This was established back in 1993 between the county and the North Tahoe Public Utility District. And as luck would have it, the North Lake Tahoe Public Utility District really wanted this JPA as a financing mechanism. Over all the years, they have not used it. And the county really has taken advantage of using it as financing mechanisms in different financings that you might remember recently, like the new building out at the DeWitt Center that was just recently done. And then we also did some lease revenue refunding bonds back in 2014 through this district. The amendment eliminates the rotation of officers and sets permanent positions historically held over the years. The county CEO as the chair and executive director, the district general manager as the vice chair, and District 5 supervisor as the secretary. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this resolution for the amendment.
Are there any questions from board members? It says we have, 15 minutes. Well, we're ahead of time.
I was hoping that I can get you guys back on track, but you guys were right on time.
All righty. Any comments, questions from board members? Any from the public? Anybody online?
I see
Okay,
none,
now we'll
Chairman.
take action.
I will move approval of the item. I'll second.
Okay, supervisors, motion by Supervisor Gore, second by Supervisor Jones. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The item is moved. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you.
7A? 7A. All right, now we'll move to item 7A. We got a whole bunch of things to approve, but you only have 5 minutes. So, giddy up.
I'll try to speak very quickly. But good morning, Honorable Board, Chair Holmes, Vice Chair Jones. My name is Aaron Gador, and I'm a housing manager for the Adult System of Care Division within the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm leaning a bit because of height challenges, but it's a pleasure to be here this morning. And so this morning, I bring an item regarding applications for housing vouchers from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I just wanted to point out a few things. So first, these are applications for federal revenue. This is federal revenue to fund local vouchers that house disabled and chronically homeless Placer County residents that would otherwise be difficult to house and keep housed. Secondly, these are mostly renewals. So renewals that support housing voucher programs that the county has successfully run for almost 20 years. And finally, we prefer to ask for permission, but in this case we are asking for ratification. Unfortunately, the Department of Housing and Urban Development only allows us 3 weeks to apply for these funds, and we actually don't know how much funding is available until the beginning of that 3-week period. So unfortunately, it's a tight turnaround, and just wanted to point out the ratification component there. So with that, I have a 4-part requested action for the board this morning. We request that the board adopt a resolution to A, ratify submission of 2 separate applications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive funds for Shelter Plus Care Permanent Supportive Housing Grant Funds for fiscal year 2023 to 2024 and fiscal year 2024 to 2025, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign the resulting agreements and related documents in individual amounts not to exceed $421,628, with a county match of $105,407 per application for the periods of June 1st, 2023 through May 31st, 2024, and June 1st, 2024 through May 31st, 2025, with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments up to $42,162 per application with the corresponding match consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work, with risk management and county council concurrence. B, ratify submission of 2 separate applications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive advocates for mentally ill housing grant funds, which resulted from a consolidation of this grant and the Adult System of Care Permanent Supportive Housing Grant Funds, grant name change pending with HUD, for fiscal year 2023 to 2024 and fiscal year 2024 to 2025, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign the resulting agreements and related documents in individual amounts not to exceed $524,039, with a county match of $131,010 per application for the periods of December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2024, and December 1st, 2024 through November 30th, 2025, with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments up to $52,403 per application with a corresponding match consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work, with risk management and county council concurrence. C, ratify submission of 2 separate applications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive funds for project-based voucher permanent supportive housing grant funds for fiscal year 2023-2024 to fiscal year 2024-2025, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign the resulting agreements and related documents in individual amounts not to exceed $49,860, with a county match of $12,465 per application for the periods of August 1st, 2023 through July 31st, 2024, and August 1st, 2024 through July 31st, 2025, with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments up to $4,986 per application with the corresponding match consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work, with risk management and county council concurrence. And finally, D, ratifies submission of an application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive funds for project-based sunroads, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign the resulting agreement and related documents for the amount not to exceed $102,187, with a county match of $25,547 for the period of July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments up to $10,218 with the corresponding match consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work, with risk management and county council concurrence. And of course, I'm available for any questions that you all might have.
Supervisor Landon.
Well, first of all, I think you have a great bedtime story. I feel like it is a compliment. I feel like I could just sit here and listen to you talk because you're a very calming voice.
Well, I had plenty to read, so yeah.
Anyways, I do have a question. So, I think a lot of times there's some hesitation taking money from the federal government and what kind of strings are going to be attached to that money. So I guess my question is related to that are there any concerns taking this money from the federal government that down the road there would be strings attached when it comes to housing or land use or anything like that?
And actually, that's an excellent question, because we've definitely seen federal funds that have so many conditions attached to them that sometimes you can wonder if it made sense to accept those funds in the first place. Luckily, throughout the nearly 20 years that we've accepted these funds and run programs as a result, we haven't seen issues with that. These grants are on a one-year cycle, so the nice thing is that if there's something that changes between cycles, we're able to say, well, actually, we don't think we're going to apply for it this year. And also, with these vouchers, most of them are tenant-based, so they're actually attached to the tenant as opposed to a particular project or the land. So with that, there wouldn't be any restrictions to the use of the land. And with the minority of the vouchers, they're actually project-based vouchers, so they are actually attached to housing developments, but they're already developed for housing, so they're not adding any kind of additional restriction or creating a restriction that wasn't there before, or particularly one that would be some kind of long-term issue.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from board members? Supervisor Jones.
Yes, actually I do. Can you explain a little bit as to who is eligible for these vouchers?
Yes. So actually with program participants, they are individuals who have a disability. So to actually be eligible for the voucher, it is someone who would have a disability, medically verified, and would have difficulty being able to be gainfully employed. And so it really is kind of, focused on a population that really would have challenges being able to be gainfully employed. Also, it focuses on people who are coming from chronic homelessness. So with those who are kind of the hardest to reach in terms of being housed, it really focuses on that population, which of course is a good thing in terms of, addressing those that, would otherwise be, costly to our system in different ways. So yeah, those are some of the details regarding those who participate. And I should note that they contribute 30% of their income towards rent. And so that's something that reinforces that it's not just our responsibility to, establish this housing, it's their responsibility as well.
Right.
And they do have, the last thing I'll note too is that they do have lease agreements, so there are enforceable lease agreements in case there is any kind of issue.
Okay. I'm just curious. I have a constituent that reached out who said she was on the verge of being evicted and becoming homeless. And she, I think she's on a disability and works part-time. But I don't know, are there any programs that would help someone like that?
Yeah. And actually it's good that she's reaching out now because it's much less expensive to try to maintain someone's housing versus trying to rehouse them or get them housed, from homelessness. So I don't think these programs, fortunately, I don't think that these programs would apply to her as much.
Like it.
But there is a housing coordination service that AMI provides. And I'm happy to make sure that information gets sent
Thank
over
you
to
very
that
much
person.
for that. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from board members? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wish to address this board? Is there anyone online?
We have one online, Chairman. Donna, go ahead and unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hello, this is Donna Delno from Penryn, and my question is, does the list for the funding go to veterans first and maybe mothers with children first, and do they go to legal citizens only? That's my question.
Excellent questions. So the way that it works is that we use a system that's established by HUD that's called the by name list. So actually it looks at who has the highest level of vulnerability, and it focuses on those populations. And so we know that, with those who are veterans, those who have served, there can be some additional needs that are associated post-service. So that would likely put someone higher up on the vulnerability index. If there are children involved, again, that would put someone higher up on the vulnerability index. So all of those factors end up being considered through the by name list and what they call coordinated entry system. And so we actually focus on looking at those who rate the highest, meaning that they have the highest need. And because these would be Placer County residents, these would focus on citizens, yes.
All right, thank you. Any other questions online?
I see none, Chairman.
Alrighty. Seeing no more public comment,
I'll move approval.
Alrighty.
I'll second.
Motion for approval by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Landon. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Now we'll move to item 8, Facilities Management Lease Agreement with Care West Insurance Company, Inc. Morning, Art.
Good morning. Eric Finley, Real Estate Services Division Manager for Facilities Management, and I'm here to bring forward a lease item today for your consideration. Specifically, requesting that you authorize the Director of Facilities Management or designee to execute a lease agreement with Care West Insurance Company, a California corporation, for a 6,500 square foot office space located at 2521 Warren Drive, Suite A in Rockland, California, with an initial term of 63 months, with 3 additional option terms of 3 years, with an annual rent of $140,400 and an annual increase of $3,900, subject to county council and risk management concurrence. And we're requesting that you determine that the requested action is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15301. And so specifically, this is a lease, but it is not for a new library or to relocate a library. It is for system-wide library services management and administrative services that are currently housed, and some would say shoehorned into the HR Annex building as well as the Auburn Library. There are 10 staff in the Auburn Library currently working to support countywide services that are not part of the Auburn Library, and your board did approve some grant funding and remodeling and renovation of the Auburn Library, and those people need to move, and they need to move permanently and not come back. Excuse me. So we're requesting approval of this lease. Facilities management did look for alternative locations at the PCGC. They needed to be a suitable space, and there just isn't suitable space at PCGC or at other sites. We also looked countywide for leases, a suitable space, and we did find a very suitable space in Rockland. So this site is on off of Granite Drive. It provides unique services in the sense it has office space as well as open area for the materials management team to do delivery of books and materials. And right now, they don't have a suitable space at the Auburn Library. They have to go upstairs. It's just not working. So this space is uniquely fitted that it allow for the office space, the administration staff, the consolidation of the administrative team, as well as the materials management team. Again, it's a 5-year term that provides flexibility into the future. If we find a different space at some point within the county system, this would allow for that, or we have options to extend. So with that, Mary George is in the audience today, and she can answer specific questions that you might have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All righty, thank you, Eric. Any questions? Supervisor Gustafson?
I brought this up in the briefing, and I just want to reiterate that if we have the opportunity to move to PCGC once we've done the HHS building and we've made the waterfall of moves.
Right.
I would certainly like to see it consolidate with other county services, but that's a long-term plan, and I certainly support that you need immediate action now. So I just wanted to put that on the record that I think our goals should be not to have lease spaces scattered, that we really should be trying to consolidate in the long term.
Right.
County facilities.
This lease does provide, I think, that flexibility that you're seeking.
All righty, thank you. Any other comments, questions from board members? I see none. And anyone in the audience wish to address this item? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty, thank you. We'll bring it back to the board for action.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
It's moved by Supervisor Gustafson, seconded by Supervisor Jones. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move to our item 9 on our department heads, department meetings, Public Works, 2023 hot mix asphalt overlay project award construction contract to All American Construction.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Good morning. Hey, I'm happy to be here for the next 3 items.
Okay.
Try to fit them in with 3 road construction projects. So the first one, as you mentioned, Supervisor Holmes, is to approve the award of competitive bid number 20419 to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, All American Construction of Sutter, California, for the construction of the 2023 hot mix asphalt overlay project in the amount of $2,409,702, and authorize the chair to execute the contract subject to county council and risk management concurrence, and then authorize the director of public works or designee to execute change orders up to $132,985 consistent with Public Contract Code, Section 20142 and Placer County Procurement Policy. And then finally, determine that the proposed action is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines 15301C.
Do we have to take these individually?
A mouthful.
These individually?
So these contracts are part of our annual road maintenance efforts. This first contract is proposing to overlay approximately 4 miles of road in the Tahoe area and then Eureka Road as well. We received 4 bids, no protests, and the lowest responsible and responsive bidder was All American Construction. This project is funded with our road maintenance and rehabilitation account funds, and we did confirm that the contractor is ready to go. So if approved, work would start later this month, probably within 2 or 3 weeks, starting in with Alpine Meadows Road and Olympic Valley up in Tahoe, and then moving to Eureka Road later this month or into October. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address this item? See none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
The motion is moved by Supervisor Gusson, second by Supervisor Jones. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move to item 9B, 2023 Surface Treatment Project, award contract to Pavement Coatings Company.
Yeah, thanks Supervisor Holmes. This action, we have got 3 actions with this, which is to approve the award of competitive bid number 20420 to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder, Pavement Coatings Co. of Eureka Valley, California, for the construction of the 2023 surface treatment project in the amount of $729,535, and then authorize the chair to execute the contract with County Council on Risk Management concurrence. We're also asking to authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to execute change orders up to $48,976 consistent with Public Contract Code, Section 20142, and the Placer County Procurement Policy. And then finally, we're asking you to determine that the proposed action is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Sections 15301C. So this is just real quick, this is the second part of our annual road maintenance efforts with about 10 miles of surface treatments. We received 2 bids, no protests, and then Pavement Coatings was the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. This is funded with a combination of county service area funds and road maintenance and rehabilitation account funds. And just like the other contract, our contractor is anxious to get going with work in Auburn and Meadow Vista later this month. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Supervisor Gusson.
Thanks, Chair Holmes. Matt, I had a comment from a city council member in Auburn this morning suggesting and asking again that when we're going to bid on projects like this and we're in close proximity to city streets, that we ask if they'd like to bid some projects at the same time and try to streamline those costs. So no objections, but just a reminder again that sometimes our smaller jurisdictions can benefit from our process, and that would be a win-win for the government agencies. So,
yeah, I hear you. Okay, we'll do.
All righty, any other questions from board members? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty, then board will bring it back for the chair.
I'll move approval.
Yes, the item has been moved by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Gusson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The item is moved.
All right,
Now
thank you
we'll
very
move to
much.
Item 9C, Summer Star Way Repair Project.
Right, so this is a request asking to delegate authority to execute some urgent construction repair projects. And again, we're asking to authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to award and execute a construction contract for the Summer Star Road Repair Project to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder for an amount not to exceed $3 million, and to execute change orders up to $162,000 consistent with Public Contract Code 20142, the Placer County Procurement Policy Manual, and subject to risk management and county council concurrence. The second action is asking you to authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to award and execute a professional services agreement for construction inspection, material testing, and construction management for this project in an amount not to exceed $250,000, and to execute amendments up to $25,000 consistent with our purchasing policy manual and subject to risk management and county council review. And then the last item is asking you to determine that the proposed actions are exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines 15301C. So Summer Star Way is located off of Highway 193 in the Newcastle area. It's the only way in and out of the Dream Ranch subdivision, which consists of about 15 parcels, larger rural parcels, but it's the only way in and out of this area for our residents. And during the 22-23 storms, the culvert partially washed out, and the road is still passable, but the damage is extensive, and we're just concerned that it'll make it through another season. So we want to urgently repair this culvert. So this delegated authority will give us the ability to advertise and award the construction contract as fast as possible, anticipated later this month or early October, and again gives us the opportunity to really repair the road before it washes out. So the total cost of this project, both contracts, is $3,437,500. So this is included in our FEMA project list, so we've requested FEMA funding. It's tentatively approved, but not with the full scope and cost that we've requested. So we're working through that process with our OES group and with FEMA. We're following the process as if we'll get awarded FEMA funds eventually. They've indicated that moving forward at risk like this doesn't preclude us from getting FEMA funds. I think the biggest thing, we want to move this project forward just so that it gets repaired and nobody's stranded. So in the meantime, we'll use our road maintenance and rehabilitation account funds to keep the project going and still work with FEMA to try to secure those funds as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments for board members? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address this item? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
All righty, we'll bring it back for action.
I'll move approval of the item.
I'll second.
The item has been, motion has been made by Supervisor Gore, second by Supervisor Landon. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The item is moved. Thank you, Matt. You may now take a deep breath.
Okay, I will. Thanks very much.
All righty. Let's see, we've got 2 minutes before our next item. Should I take item D? Okay. We'll now move to item D, solid waste handling service in franchise areas 2 and 3. Hello there.
Morning, Board. Jared Deck, Program Manager for Environmental Engineering. I'll try to make this quick so you can hear 11 item. So I'm presenting the item before you, the solid waste handling service and franchise agreement and franchise areas 2 and 3, the professional services agreement. To provide a little history, the owners of the Eastern Regional Sanitary Landfill, Inc. and Tahoe Truckee Disposal Company have been providing trash service in the Tahoe area since approximately 1972. In 2003, the board approved an item to actually accept and purchase the closed landfill and material recovery facility from ERL TTD. And since that point, ERL TTD has had a contract with the county for providing solid waste handling services, which cover collection, transportation, processing, recycling, and disposal of solid waste in the eastern portion of the county. And that covers for franchise areas 2 and 3, east of the city of Colfax, all the way to the Nevada state line. So over the last year and a half, county staff has been in discussions just on terms of potential long-term extension with ERL TTD for your board's consideration. And so some of those key items that we've been looking at are the full compliance with implementation of Senate Bill 1383, so the solid waste compliance. In addition to that, additional contractor staff to assist with this regulation, along with AB 1826. And also capital project implementation to retrofit the facility. The facility is getting older, so we have a lot of upgrades that need to happen at the facility, so having them assist with that. And finally, implementation of a final closure plan for the reclamation area, which is the fill area which they used to borrow some of the soil to actually cover the closed landfill, so refilling that to a natural state. So to date, the discussions have not led to a proposal that meets the needs of the county and staff feels comfortable supporting. So currently, the contract ends June 30th of 2024. During that discussions for the contract extension, staff recommended to ERL TTD potentially a 2-year or possibly 3-year extension. ERL TTD actually declined that and only wanted to do a 1-year extension. So currently we're bound by that 1-year extension, which ends in June of next year. So within that, we're on a bit of a time restraint. With the negotiations continuing going on and with the time restraint of 1 year left, we're looking to move forward with conducting a development of an RFP. So our proposal right now, staff is requesting the approval of working with R3 Consulting to actually develop that RFP. Also, I'd just like to mention that the RFP does not preclude any additional discussions between the county and ERL TTD on a potential long-term extension. So while we're working through the development of the RFP, we still have the ability to work with them and negotiate a potential long-term deal. So if a long-term deal is developed and county staff feels that it's appropriate and would be beneficial to the county, at that point we'll be able to bring it to the board for your approval before the implementation of the RFP itself. So finally, the requested action. Authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to execute an agreement not to exceed $150,000 with R3 Consulting Group to draft a request for proposals for solid waste handling and processing services contract in franchise area 2 and 3, subject to County Council and risk management concurrence. The second request is to approve a fiscal year budget in 23-24, an amendment for AM 00862 for CC 12006 Solid Waste Fund in the amount of $150,000 and cancel Solid Waste Fund in the amount of $150,000. And the last requested action is to determine the proposed actions are not projects pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15378. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Supervisor Gustafson.
Yes, thanks, Jared. We've had such a long running partnership with TTD and they've done an excellent job, and I know that you've been reaching out to work with them on this, and I know we need to do this for competitive processes. How are they reacting to the idea of going back out to bid?
It's definitely helped speed up the negotiations a little bit more.
Okay.
They've been very attentive in working with us through the whole time period. I mean, it's been almost actually 2 years of this negotiation process. So it has helped push those conversations along, and we're still negotiating with them. We have another meeting this week to talk through that to make sure we can kind of hopefully give them an opportunity to continue this contract in the long term.
Yeah, being a smaller company that is located here in Placer County and has served the county residents in that area for a very long time, I haven't heard from them, but I would assume that it's concerning, and I appreciate the efforts you've gone through to communicate with them and for us to understand the situations, what we need to do for county competitive processes as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
I'll bring it back to the board for action.
I'll move approval.
It's been moved by Supervisor Jones, seconded by Supervisor Gustafson. Gore. Supervisor Gore. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jones?
Aye.
Gustafson?
Aye.
Gore? Landon?
Yes.
Holmes?
Aye. Thank you. The item is moved.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to our 10 o'clock time, 11 o'clock timed item, Community Development Resource Agency. Land Development Manual Phase 1 Update, all supervisorial districts. Mr. Kwong. Wow, the team.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. David Kwong, your agency director. This is 2 years of work, almost 2 years of work, and 27 years in the making. And it's a good thing. We are proposing a land development manual to address West Placer growth, and really is a tool to be consistent with standards and practices around us. There's been a lot of stakeholder outreach you're going to hear from the staff, as well as hopefully some stakeholders that are present today as well. And is really, I just want to take a moment, if I can, to kick off. There we have a consultant team here. I also want to acknowledge the collaboration between CEDRA and Public Works on a lot of these standards moving forward, and really making them more of our best practices. But if I can just take a moment, in addition to the regular work that our staff does every day, there were 17 people involved between CEDRA and Public Works on this. Our two main project managers are Michelle Lewis and Rebecca Tabor. But we've also had Adrian Compton, Phil Fashion, Sarah Gilmore, Kevin Bell, Phil Franz, Nick Cappuccino, Matt Bartholomew, Ben Berdakian, Brad Brewer, Matt Randall, Rich Moorhead, Mary Keller, Fred Stam, Alex Fish, and Anne-Marie Novotny, all doing this on their side time when they can. But at the same time working a lot with the outreach, in terms of outreach with our stakeholders, and just pleased and proud to present this item before the board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. Thank you, David. Good morning, Chair Holmes and members of the board, Jane and Karen. It is my pleasure to be here today to introduce this item. I'm Rebecca Tabor, a Deputy Director with the Department of Public Works, but formerly your Deputy Director in Community Development, Engineering, and Surveying. And I'm here to introduce and support this Land Development Manual Phase 1 update. It's very exciting to be here. This is a major milestone. We call this the LDM for short, the Land Development Manual. It contains engineering design standards and details for both public and private infrastructure such as roads, sewer, and drainage. This update is critical to respond to the development pace in West Placer County for developing urbanizing areas and also to help implement infill housing areas and projects. We have organized today's presentation with me introducing our consultant team describing the collaborative outreach process and technical updates, and your current ESD Deputy Director, Michelle Lewis, concluding with the next steps and the action requested. First, I'd like to introduce the presenters. I have been the project manager for the LDM update for the past year and involved since it first kicked off over 2 years ago. Michelle Lewis will be concluding our presentation today, and this timing is perfect to transition to Michelle since she will be leading the Phase 2 effort to complete the full LDM update. Dan Dotai was your former Deputy Director with Engineering and Surveying, and he retired from Placer County almost exactly 4 years ago. He's currently with King Engineering as our consultant on this LDM update, providing his valuable county experience and engineering expertise. And Gladys Cornell is our consultant facilitator. She has led the outreach engagement with internal and external stakeholders for the entire process, which has been transparent and comprehensive approach to solicit feedback and invite discussion. We also have engineers, Phil Vashin and Sarah Gilmore from Public Works. They provided considerable review and input on streets and sewer. Additionally, as David noted, many staff in ESD and DPW have participated, and we couldn't have done this update without collaboration and dedication of your staff. It's been a team effort. So, as David said, some sections of the LDM have not been updated for 27 years. In 2021, a Placer Vineyards developer formally requested to ESD that several changes to standards in the LDM be made related to drainage, streets, and sewer. Several engineering firms working on adjacent City of Roseville or Sac County projects also voiced their concerns, with Placer County standards being stricter or not suited to the very flat terrain in the West Placer area. We knew an update to the manual was needed, but it was the implementation of the specific plan projects in West Placer that really catalyzed this update process. Our objectives were to more closely align our urban design standards with neighboring jurisdictions, reflect current construction practices, and also reformat the entire manual to make it a searchable document to post online. These 3 sections have been the focus for phase 1, streets, drainage, and sewers. They're really the core for urbanizing areas. Our goal throughout the update process was to strike a balance with achieving cost savings for development projects while still designing for ease and low cost of ongoing maintenance for public improvements that Placer County accepts for maintenance. So again, our focus on standards for the urbanizing development areas, and then also focused on the housing needs, similar to adjacent development in Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln, and Sacramento County. But these 3 updated sections, they do apply countywide. Next, I'll invite Gladys to the podium to describe the extensive outreach and iterative review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, members of the Board of Supervisors. Gladys Cornell with AIM Consulting. We were the stakeholder engagement consulting practice firm that worked with the county and King Engineering. And so I think I just hit this. Oops, this one? Okay, perfect. So wanted to just highlight a little bit about the stakeholder engagement process that assisted in updating the land development manual, which included both internal county staff and external stakeholders. As you can see from this slide, we had a number of external stakeholders, developers with experience in Placer County and other adjoining jurisdictions, development lobbyists, the BIA, housing specialists, and design engineers. We worked with more than 20 external stakeholder entities. The outreach process included workshops, one-on-one meetings with West Placer participants, and also quite a number of staff meetings. We had 5 workshops over a 2-year period, including meeting number 1, which we introduced the land development update. I've got feedback on the storm drain, sewer, and road standards. Through that workshop, we had 42 proposed suggestions, and then after one-on-one meetings, we had 66 suggestions. So a considerable number, yes. We also went through meeting number 2, where we provided updates and reviewed the recommended changes to the first phase, and then we dived deeper on meetings 3, 4, and 5. One-on-one meetings we held with West Placer participants, including developers, designers, outside utility agencies, and we had 13 one-on-one meetings that were held with various West Placer participants. My apologies, I have braces and they're making it very difficult for me to enunciate. You would think at my age, braces, but whatever. One-on-one meetings, as you can see, again, quite a number of them. I won't go through the list, but if you have any questions, more than happy to discuss those. And then, as you can see, we held more than 40 meetings with the county divisions and departments, so significant participation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Gladys.
Hi,
morning.
Dan. You look vaguely familiar.
A little bit, yes. Good to see you again, Chair Holmes, members of the board. Good morning. It's been a while. It's nice to be before your board again. For the record, Daniel Datai, Senior Civil Engineer with King Engineering, the consultant for the project. So let me get started here. So as mentioned, when we started this process a few years back, we sent out a survey to the external stakeholders and to staff asking for all the suggestions they would like to see as part of this update, and we tracked that. And I believe that tracking document is at the end of your staff report. So we know how many changes were offered, and we tracked the results of those. So let me start with section 4, streets. We had 36 changes proposed as part of that. update, and we implemented 36 of those. And I want to touch on a few of those more significant changes, give your board a little flavor for what we did. We created new arterial intersection turn lane details. So as development in Placer County evolves from a rural environment to more of an urban environment, there will be the need for larger intersections, signalized intersections. The city of Roseville has templates to help guide developers in this regard. Placer County DPW suggested we should have those as well. So we implemented that as part of this update. We have 6 templates to apply to very arterial intersection roads for various traffic loading conditions, turning demands, and those provide guidance for the developers, but also on the county staff side, it provides certainty. It provides the geometrics that the staff wants to see, dimensions, so it's certainty for the design, and then later on for maintenance. It provides consistency where those same standards are applied over time. We created a single lane roundabout design standard. Again, City of Roseville, City of Rockland, and Sac County had one. Placer County did not. As we get more into the urban development in Placer County, we wanted to introduce this standard. This provides a template again for the developers, saves them design time and cost, and they know exactly the standards the county is looking for to implement a residential roundabout. We created a street light design standard. So Placer County has their own design standards in the Land Development Manual. It doesn't encompass all of them. So what standards are not in the manual, the county defers back to Caltrans, and that's a common, all other jurisdictions do that. Caltrans standards are created for highways, not necessarily for local streets. So sometimes those standards can be over-designed for street purposes and more costly. Street lights was one of them. So we introduced a street light standard here that now designers can drop that design detail right into their plans, and they can construct a street light in Placer County that's less costly than if they use the Caltrans detail. We reduced some roadway widths, as Ms. Tabor mentioned. External stakeholders wanted to see some more consistency between the jurisdictions as we develop more. Down in the neighborhoods that they are also in, there's continuity between the roadway sections, between the jurisdictions. So there was a goal to see if we can reduce the roadway widths in Placer County to more closely align to the other jurisdictions. And we made some changes. We didn't match them exactly, but we did reduce several sections. And that goes a long way to not only having that connectivity be more consistent, but a cost savings as well. And these improvements too, I think, are important for Placer County with a goal towards arena housing goals, because when we can narrow down infrastructure, it provides additional real estate to meet housing demand. So that's an important push that was part of this update as well. We created an alley design standard. Again, this goes to a more urban environment. By having a design standard for an alley now, like the other city jurisdictions do, it allows for a more dense street section for access to roads and plays into the arena housing goals again. And then we reduced the cul-de-sac and 90-degree elbow dimensions. We realized going in that county standards were a little more conservative than other jurisdictions. We reached out to Placer Fire, South Placer Fire, and then mutual aid agencies as well, Sac Metro. We got templates for their fire trucks, and we did turning template analyses, and we realized we can reduce several feet off of the cul-de-sacs and off of the elbows. Again, that additional several feet adds up over many roads and provides additional real estate for housing. Section 5 drainage. So on the drainage side, there were 18 suggestions offered. 16 of those were implemented. Touching on a few of the more important ones, we now allow storm drain pipe invert matching. So currently the Land Development Manual, I don't want to get too engineering on you, the manual requires that the storm drain pipes match crowns. That's the top of the pipe. And as it works in environments we have sufficient topographic fall and relief, like in Auburn and in the foothills. As you get down to areas with less relief, you start matching crowns. As those pipes get larger, it starts to drive the pipes into the ground, and it gets hard to daylight those pipes. Other jurisdictions in the flatter, lower topographic areas, City of Roseville, Sacramento County, they match inverts, which is the bottom of the pipe. So we employ that change here to allow largely development out in the West Plaza area to be able to facilitate proper drainage. Pressure flow in some pipes, this is the same situation. Currently, the land development manual does not allow pressure flow for new design. When you get into lower areas of the county, you have to allow pressure flow. There's no way around it. Otherwise, you just don't have enough topographic relief to make it a full gravity system. Developers know that. A lot of the projects coming in right now, Placer Vineyards, Placer Ranch, Realo Vineyards, what the designers have to do are called design exception requests, where the designers will put together an exception request with exhibits. They'll submit it to staff. Staff reviews it. Invariably, staff approves it because you have to have the pressure flow to make that work. It's exercise in futility, I would say, because you're repeating that process over and over again, taking time and money. So we implemented that change in the land development manual so we can almost throw out the window the design acceptance process, and everybody's time can be used for more meaningful work. We now allow small water quality features to encroach into the floodplain. So the floodplain primary purpose is for conveyance of flood flows, and you don't want any obstructions in the floodplain. However, as development tends to densify, California wants higher density, right? They're promulgating higher density for housing purposes. It gets more challenging to fit in water quality features. At the same time, the state of California is pushing for higher density. They're also pushing for more water quality treatment. And a lot of that is localized as well. So what we have allowed now, with some caveats, is small water quality basins to be sited in the fringes of the floodplain. These will not obstruct flood flows. And their caveats are they need to be maintained, and if they're washed out by a flood, they'll have to be reestablished by the owner of that entity, usually the HOA. However, by moving those out from otherwise outside of the floodplain into the floodplain, once again frees up additional real estate for housing. So that's a significant push to help densify housing. And then lastly, we reduce some upstream run-on flow requirements for stormwater modeling. This gets a little complex, but right now, the LDM does not allow mitigation to be worked into models for downstream stormwater flows. It hasn't been a significant problem in the past because there's not a lot of projects that require that mitigation. When you get down into the West Placer areas, there is significant mitigation. You've got county ordinances that require detention to mitigate peak flow increases. And then for projects like Placer Ranch, you have conditions of approval that require volumetric retention. That's another basin. So that has to be maintained to also address stormwater runoff. And then you got state of California now mandates for called hydromodification, basically to promote stormwater infiltration basins I'd mentioned earlier for treating water more locally rather than sending it downstream. So all these mitigate flows. So by the LDM not allowing those mitigations to be built into the models, it was resulting in higher stormwater flows than what would really be realized in the field. So now we have introduced the allowable mitigation to be introduced with a 25% factor of safety to make sure we're okay. But this is going to result in downstream flows that should be a little bit lower. And instead of putting in an oversized pipe, it'll allow for right-sized pipe, if you will. And then Section 6, sewers. 11 changes were offered, and all 11 were implemented. And some of the more significant changes, we increased manhole sewer spacing. Currently, the LDM requires sewer manholes to be no more than 400 feet apart. That was based on the technology 20, 30 years ago when this manual was first created. I think the sewer section may go back to 1996. You could reliably vector truck a sewer line about 200 feet from any manhole. So 200 feet on one, 200 feet on the other gave you a 400-foot separation. Technology is advanced. You can now readily vacuum 250 feet easily. So staff agreed, county staff said, yes, we can start pushing those manholes out a little more. Means 3 or 4 less manholes per subdivision development. There's a cost savings. Sewer manholes, I want to say, are $10,000 to $15,000 each, so all this adds up. Increased sewer pipe sizes that are classified as trunk sewer. So currently the LDM classifies any sewer 10-inch or larger as a trunk sewer. adjacent jurisdictions qualify trunk sewer as 12 inches and larger. The reason why this is important, trunk sewer is a special sewer component, requires additional design considerations, coatings, et cetera, that cost more money to build a trunk sewer. So Placer County staff agreed, and going forward, from this point forward, we will qualify 12-inch lines and larger as trunk sewer. So developers that are putting in 10-inch lines that are truly collector lines can build to a collector lower cost standard rather than a trunk higher cost standard. We also reduce instances of curved sewer where special design considerations are required. So when sewer lines are built in a road with a curve for maintenance, for clearing and TVing those sewer lines and maintaining them, it's easier if those segments in between are straight rather than curved. Curved pipe tends to be a little more problematic when you're working with it. The trade-off is that when you do that, it usually results in an additional manhole needed. And of course, it can crowd out other utilities if it's a narrow roadway. So the external developers wanted to eliminate that. We didn't necessarily eliminate this criteria, but we reduced it considerably where it's required now. And we provided more specificity in the manual to give them an idea of where and how they need to address that. So there should be a cost savings there as well. And then the last item, we eliminated ambiguous language. Again, this manual, section 6, goes back almost 30 years. There was language in section 6 that talked about to the extent practicable. And really probably doesn't belong in the guidance manual, right? To the extent practical can vary on which plan checker might be reviewing those plans at any given time. This was probably the #1 item that external stakeholders wanted eliminated from the manual. Staff agreed. We eliminated it, and we provided in its place more specificity that addresses those issues. So that change provides more upfront clarity and specificity for the designers, and the ambiguous language was eliminated. And then one more item I'd like to touch on, the grading design details. Currently in the land development manual, the grading design details, they kind of float. They're by themselves. They're not really tied down to any specific component. The county has a grading ordinance, which is separate. It is updated. I think it's been updated several times. It's pretty good right now as it stands. The grading design details are not associated with that. The grading design details are also not associated with any other part of the land development manual. So as part of this update, we associated it with streets. We felt that was the best place for us to locate these design detail plates. And we have 5 grading plates total. We made small changes to 4 of them, but we made a big change to 1. And that's the Class 1 lot grading. The current design detail requires 2% back to front versus 1%, which is more common in the industry. So when I'm talking about a Class 1 lot grading, these are the pads that are built with the infrastructure before the houses are built. And you need to slope them a little bit for drainage so the water doesn't pond on those pads. The criteria, ultimately, when it's a finished lot, you need to meet California residential building codes. California residential building codes are complex. They're very challenging to read. The design detail as currently drawn conflates several of those standards, and the 2% was a result of that. We went through exercises doing sections, and we realized we can do 1% instead of 2%. We met with staff, the building division, and ESD, went through those sections and agreed that we can still meet the residential building codes with those sections. And as part of that exercise, it's interesting to note, when you change the building pad from a 1% to a 2%, it adds anywhere from 1/2 to 1.5 feet of additional pad elevation. So 2 components of that. You're adding almost a foot to a pad at a cost, engineered fill for the developer. But number 2, it increases your driveway slopes. Instead of having a 3 or 4% driveway slope, a gradual driveway slope, you get a 6 or 7, right? Homeowners don't want steep driveways. They prefer more gradual driveways. So this is a very significant change, long overdue, and I think the new standard works really well for clarity. And I believe that is it for my component of the presentation, and I will turn it over to Ms. Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Lewis. I'm the current Deputy Director of Engineering and Surveying. As you can tell, I had great people that went before me and paved the way for me, and I appreciate that. And they have taken extensive effort, and there's been great improvements to the LDM in this Phase 1 section, but there's more to do. So the Phase 2 LDM update is going to move forward. We'll probably start that this fall. We hope that this one will take a year, and it's going to include all the rest of the sections that weren't included with just 4, 5, and 6. And it will include Section 2 here is the plan formatting. That Section 2 outlines improvement plan formats and processes, so that section will be updated. Section 16 is the specifications. Section 8 is our survey section. There's also the utilities section. We'll also have, I don't have it on here, maybe it's the next slide. Yep. So also includes section 15 and 17, which is erosion control and stormwater quality. We're going to combine those two sections because they're very related to each other. We're also going to look at Tahoe-centric design standards and some housing-focused standards for Tahoe. So there will be some coordination and outreach in Phase 2 with the Tahoe area. We also, with the Phase 2 update, are going to be looking at a update process that would involve an annual update for technical updates to look at standards and practices and be able to do updates, make this a living document, be able to do annual updates without bringing it to the board. We're going to look at the process for that for involving the development community, other interested parties, and all the departments within the county to process these updates and evaluate them and determine which ones can be made and at what level. So with this request that we have before you today, we are requesting to be able to make minor updates to the LDM. Typos, as we go through, we find little things that, that should say plates instead of, or details instead of plates, or so typos, clarification. A lot of times as we go along and improvement plans are reviewed, there's confusion from the developer of what was meant by the details or the text that's in there, so there can be clarifying language that would be added, and just very minor updates to the LDM that could be made without bringing it back to the board. But again, the Phase 2 process would involve a more robust updating process. We also have already started and will continue some in-house updates where we're looking at meetings. We've been having meetings with the building industry and their engineering firms. We'll do additional outreach to include, as I've said, some Tahoe developers and look at some process improvements. So these have been kind of going hand in hand. We've already started a lot of these meetings. We have been looking at improvements to the plan review process, which, as I've said, is a Phase 2 update, or a Section 2 of the LDM. Also, the dry utility plan overlaying timing. That's going to be important because a lot of times we're still, the developers are still in the midst of their negotiations with the dry utility companies as they're seeking plan approval. So this will allow for a process that allows us to understand where those dry utilities are going to be and how they're going to be put in, but maybe the exact design not being determined yet. And so again, that's probably going to be a Section 2 update. We also will include some negotiations with water providers. I know we've already done some of that as we were working with the sewer improvements, but that will continue. There's, the roads, we share a lot. We share that real estate to put all the utilities in there. So there's sometimes some conflicts between the water, the drainage, and the sewer. And so this Phase 2 update will include some negotiations with and discussions with those water the water providers, so that we can resolve those conflicts. We have started those meetings already. Our construction crew has been sitting down with the water agencies to kind of resolve issues that are currently coming up during the construction process already. We also may include some other process improvements. There's things that we're discussing with the building industry, ways that we could expedite or simplify our process, streamline it, and then more effectively use staff time for these things. And it could include such things. We're evaluating occupancy and how that is associated with acceptance, final acceptance of improvements, just our mapping processes, the construction, even into entitlement, we're looking at some of that, which I meant to mention. Some of the LDM update for phase 2 will include, first one did too, but coordination with planning, because sections 9 through 14 are planning sections of the LDM, and some of the guidelines, the design guidelines. So we'll be updating those to be current as well. I did want to mention too, with some of this in-house updates, planning has already done some of the zoning ordinance updates. So as we update the LDM, we find that sometimes there's zoning ordinance updates that need to be done, or even code updates that need to be done. And so through this process, we're coordinating with planning to update some of those sections as well. So our actions requested today are to adopt a resolution for phase 1 of the planned update of the Placer County Land Development Manual to A, approve the full updates of both text and design details for section 4, 5, and 6, streets, drainage, and sewers, and to authorize the director of the Community Development Resource Agency and the director of the Department of Public Works or their designees to process subsequent minor updates to the Placer County Land Development Manual. We also ask that you determine that the proposed action is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3. So with that, that ends our presentation, but we're all here and available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Supervisor Gore has a question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a lot of work, and probably when I came into my role as a county supervisor, some of the first comments I heard from folks who were looking to develop in the community was, Placer County has a long way to go when they've been working in the city of Roseville. And not that the city of Roseville does it perfect, but we just didn't have the standards, right? And I know this has been a lot of work for all of you, but I really appreciate your work. I appreciate the work of our development community. And really, it's a money saver, but it's really a money and time saver, not only for the developers, for all of you, right? So with those standards, you know what to expect of them. They know what to expect. This will be so much better. So I just appreciate the work that you've done, appreciate the work that our building community has done, meeting you all and working hard to get to some really good changes. So I just appreciate the effort.
Thank you, Supervisor Gore. Supervisor Landon.
I'll echo everything that Supervisor Gore said. Thank you so much for all of the work and time that you have put into this. Really great work, and I think is a really good step toward us at the county providing a high level of service for those folks who are going to be developing within the unincorporated areas, as there's so many projects coming forward. So thank you for that. And then I do have one question on, I don't know which slide number it was, but it was on section 5 for the drainage when you talked about the floodplain. My question is, if there is no HOA, what would happen if one of those basins is washed out and it needs to be repaired?
So for any water quality basin or detention or retention basin, there is always an owner of the basin, if you will, designated. Usually it's an HOA in a residential development. Could be commercial, and that would be the commercial owner. But maintenance is required per state of California regulations. So not only does the county carry forward those regulations and require those basins be constructed, the state regulations require that the entities for maintaining them also be identified. And usually it would be through the HOA, and I think most subdivisions would have the HOA. And of course, we've also got development notebooks through the Placer County, so they can be memorialized in the development notebook as well. I suppose it could be on Title II. I don't know if you want to go that far, but that's an option as well. But those entities are clearly identified up front, even absent these changes that's already occurring right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you. I echo all the hard work and engagement that's gone on, and I raised this issue in my briefing about the Tahoe outreach, but also to the smaller developers, because what I hear is those are the harder projects to sometimes pencil, and how these standards might work in the larger areas where we've got brand new, but when we're doing redevelopment, infill development, smaller projects. I just want to make sure that we are allowing enough flexibility with environmental constraints and space constraints that we're achieving our goals of getting more housing on the ground in these areas. So I think that's in phase 2, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing it and making sure we have outreach. I appreciate the larger developers' engagement and resources to participate. I know often our smaller project proponents don't necessarily have the dedicated staff to participate and have a voice, and so anything we can do to streamline their input on the obstacles they faced and how we can continue, because I think this is a great step forward. Keep going.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions or comments from board members, is there anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Mr. Short.
Yes. Good late morning, Chair Holmes and members of the board. Jeff Short. I prefer the term development advocate with the North State Building Industry Association. So I do represent residential development, home builders, and affiliated industry companies. Here to express support for this item unconditionally. Staff and King Engineering, their consultants, have been incredibly collaborative and communicative. You saw, I think they did a good job of explaining the outreach and how many of our suggestions that they were able to work with. It wasn't 100%. I think, the engineers, engineering companies especially that I relied on heavily, who actually understand this stuff as we worked through this, would say that there are some minor areas of disagreement left, and the reason that I am unequivocally supporting this is because we very much appreciate staff's progressive efforts to find ways to do more regular, smaller updates that don't need to come to you on a regular basis. And we'll continue to work with them in the same collaborative fashion on those minor updates, as well as we move into phase 2, which I'm sure will be just as fun and hopefully not take as long. I think that's all I had. So again, thank you, and thank you to your wonderful team.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, do we have anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
Alrighty, we'll bring this back to board for approval.
I will move approval of the item.
Second.
The item's been moved by Supervisor Gore, second by Supervisor Gustafson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? The item is moved. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation. Great work, great work. All right. Now, where the hell are we? Item 10? There it is. All right, we'll now move to item 10. This is County Executive Pension and Other Post-Employment Benefit Funding Policy Update. Mr. Chatney.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. Daniel Chatney with the County Executive Office. The item before you today is to adopt a resolution approving an amended Placer County pension and other post-employment benefit funding policy. In an effort to continue to implement sound financial practices, we present to the board an amended pension and other post-employment funding policy update. Current fiscal practices to improve our funded ratios for post-employment liabilities occur each year with board direction. We are requesting to add some of these practices into the policy to solidify board support and future compliance with these fiscally appropriate actions. So the first one, annually, the county pays or attempts to pay its annual PERS contribution as a lump sum. Doing so is less expensive, creates interest savings, and allows us the opportunity to invest those savings into the county's Section 115 Pension Trust Fund. The Pension Trust Fund is to provide a backstop against future pension and PERS rate increases for us. The second change, or the second amendment in the policy, is on the OPEB side. And the county, in practice, has been reimbursing itself for actual retiree health costs annually. And the county is also allowed to reimburse itself for the implicit subsidy. which is an amount calculated into the annual OPEB contribution to adjust for higher costs of care for certain demographics, and it's also included in our liability calculation. Being overfunded, it allows us the opportunity to reimburse ourselves for that implicit subsidy, and we have done so in the last 2 years. Once that implicit subsidy is reimbursed to the county, it becomes property of discretionary general fund. And our activity or our actions requested also align to have that implicit subsidy amount then deposited into our Pension 115 trust fund for pension obligations. So following these practices, the county could contribute approximately $8 million annually to our pension trust. And although these actions don't directly improve our PERS funded ratio, it does put the county in a strong financial position to manage our post-employment benefits. That is my presentation on that one. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Any questions, comments from board members? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address this item? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
All righty. So,
I'll say what a nice problem to have and make a motion to move forward.
motion
I'll
by,
second.
motion by Supervisor Gore. I think Supervisor Gustafson was second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, thank you. That item is moved. Now we'll move to item 10B, transfer of other post-employment benefit assets.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Daniel Chatney with the County Executive Office. This item is to approve a transfer of $100 million of other post-employment benefit assets from the California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust, or CERBIT, to the Public Agency Retirement Services OPEB plan. In June of 2022, your board approved the creation of a second OPEB trust account with PARS, our Public Agency Retirement Services organization, and that to supplement OPEB assets being held by PERS through the CERBIT Trust. At that time, the county also moved $225 million of assets to the new PARS Trust, and since that time, and historically, PARS investments have outperformed PERS. Over the last year, that outperformed PERS by 4.8%, and over the past 3 years by 2.5%. Because of these results and the outstanding service provided by the PARS team, the Finance Committee, which includes the County Executive Office, the Office of the Auditor Controller, and the Treasurer Tax Collector, recommends transferring another $100 million to the PARS plan. This transfer does not affect the county's fully funded OPEB plan, but allows for improvement on that ratio. Keeping some assets with PERS maintains flexibility and diversification to manage our long-term post-employment benefits. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments from board members?
May I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
How much money is left then in the statewide trust?
The other one.
fund? Yeah, just what's the balance between the two now?
So before the transfers, as of June 30th, 2023, the PARS OPEB Trust has $243.6 million. The CERBIT Trust has $217.7 million. So that would leave about $117 million in the PERS CERBIT Trust Fund, and then starting at $343 million in the PARS Trust Fund. So we total of still over $460 million and still over 100% funded.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? I see none. Anyone in the audience wish to address this item? I see none. Is there anyone online?
I see none, Chairman.
All righty. Bring it back to the board for action. Motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Gustafson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing the matter is approved.
Thank you, Board.
Mr. Chatney. Now we'll move to item C, fire services in Eastern Placer County. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, board. Jane Karen, Stephanie Holloway, your deputy CEO in the Tahoe Eastern Placer, I'll say Eastern Placer, today, your deputy CEO in that region. So happy to be here before lunch and to be in Auburn. I know I usually see many of you in the Tahoe area, but happy to bring this item to you today. So The item before you, before your board, is related to the Truckee Fire Protection District Annexation Number 7, known as Zone 7, and a conversation that has been ongoing for, I'll say, upwards of 30-plus years, related to fire funding in this zone. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through some history. You know, some of you may recall recently your board did consider and adopt a voluntary tax exchange agreement back in October of 2019 with the Truckee Fire Protection District related to additional funding for fire services within this area. So we're going to talk through that. I'm going to give you a brief history. The reason for the conversation again here today is that we have received a recent letter from the Truckee Fire Protection District from the chief, basically outlining some service, I don't want to say shortfalls, but just overall service observations that they've had and the need for additional funding. So as I mentioned, there's a long history related to that. I'm not going to go through that entirely, but just to summarize, but due to the complexity of this issue and really the ongoing desire of the Fire Protection District to continue to have conversation around funding, we are seeking an action of your board today to form an Eastern Placer Fire Services Ad Hoc Committee with two board members, two of your board members representing, to really focus on this issue and come to a final resolution, hopefully. So with that, I'll just start with an orientation of the entire county map here regarding fire protection services. Obviously, there is a patchwork here of different fire protection special districts of Placer County. Focusing today on Eastern Placer and the Truckee Fire Protection District. Up here in the upper quadrant, you can see the Fire Protection District for Truckee does extend and overlay the Martis Valley area in Eastern Placer, but it does also extend into the Serene Lakes area and as far east as the areas of Cisco Grove. So just to orientate you and kind of refresh your memory on just the overall sort of patchwork conversation. Obviously, your board is familiar with all of these issues and has had many recent conversations around fire service delivery. So today, to orientate you to the Martis Valley area, this is what we call Zone 7 and was an area that was annexed into the Truckee Fire Protection District back in through an agreement back in 1974, so predating Prop 13. Specifically, there are 16 tax rate areas that encompass this Zone 7 annexation area. One area that is excluded is specifically kind of right in the middle. You can see the yellow area. That is the Lahontan subdivision. It is not part of the Zone 7 discussion. And then just for clarity, the green section here on the map is actually the North Star area and is not part of the overall service delivery of Truckee Fire. So just a brief history here, and I want to acknowledge the amount of information that is in the record regarding this conversation and the complexity of not only the annexation of Zone 7, but also the formation or the advent of Prop 13 and AB 8, going forward with many conversation of land use plans in the region. So there is an extensive amount of history. I'm not going to go through all of that today, but just to give you some key framework timeframes for your consideration. And prior to passage of Prop 13 in 1978, taxing entities were able to set their own tax rates for maintenance and operation. With the passage of Prop 13, entities received a share, as you know, of the 1% tax rate called the ad valorem, and is based on the property tax revenues that were received in 1975-76 tax year, 1976-77, and 1977-78 fiscal year. AB 8 was subsequently approved and really defined the implementation of Prop 13 and further clarifying the process for determining how that allocation of the 1% tax rate was administered. So backing up just a little bit, before the passage of Prop 13, the Truckee Fire Protection District did levy 2 separate property tax rates. One of those rates was the special zone annexation 7 for the improvement value only. So basically what that means is future development of the region would be subject to that levy. The other rate in the area was for all the other TRAs was a normal full taxable rate. In 2003, the county did take forward, and your board adopted an update to the Martis Valley Community Plan. It included a full EIR for that development plan. Truckee Fire did comment on that plan in a letter dated June 18th of 2002. The district did provide that letter, but no mention at that time was made about the need for funding for future development. So that's just a context for you here. On February 21st, 2017, the district did establish an ordinance, ordinance number 01/2017, for a community facilities district, or a CFD, really targeted on future development within the region. But at that point, I will point out that Martis Camp, which is an area of development within this zone district, was a good portion of that was built out. So just kind of fast forwarding, that's the kind of the back history. Fast forwarding to 2010, which is when we did have a number of conversations and are included in the record that was provided for you today. Ongoing correspondence with the Truckee Fire Protection District about concerns over this specific Zone 7 area and the lack of funding for future development. So I've just highlighted a couple of sort of key pieces of the record and correspondence that we had, the county executive's office and a number of different offices that the county had. Correspondence with our executive office in 2011, correspondence with a citizens committee in 2015, and discussion with the fire chief Celine in 2018. Really all that culminated then in a formal proposal by their legal counsel for the district, on April 15th of 2019, requesting that the Board of Supervisors consider a voluntary tax exchange agreement. So that brings us to 2019, and as many of you were on the board at the time will remember the conversations regarding a request that we received from the Fire Protection District for an exchange agreement of 40% of the fire control fund tax within this area. So as many of you know, that was executed, and that funding has been administered to the Fire Protection District since 2020. So just fast forwarding, as I mentioned earlier, we have received a letter from the Truckee Fire Protection District in February of this year requesting further consideration of new funding or additional funding related to this zone. And so the letter from current Fire Chief McKechnie has requested that additional funding be provided that is proportional to the assessed value of the Annexation 7 area and commensurate with other funding within their district and throughout their district. They are also suggesting in the letter compensation dating back to resolve unpaid taxes back to the original annexation time period. So that letter from the chief has been provided as part of your packet as well for further information. So I think the primary question for us today is what has, kind of for the district and further conversation with the district is what has occurred since 2019 that has changed, that has, sort of brought this additional request forward. Staff is requesting, therefore, the formation of a Eastern Placer Fire Services Ad Hoc Committee. It would be a focused committee ad hoc committee of your board, 2 members representing that board for a limited duration, really focused on going and coming up with a common understanding of all of the history that I have very briefly touched on with you here today, but a common understanding between the district board members and representatives of your board, and also looking for any potential options for further discussion and bringing back to your board potentially for consideration. So that is the request of your board. Obviously received a presentation, a lot of history here, but the request to establish an Eastern Placer Fire Services Ad Hoc Committee, as I mentioned, to discuss really the ongoing history here of conversation and potential options. And you can see here the other request is just to appoint 2 board members to serve on that ad hoc committee, as I mentioned, for a limited duration. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair Holmes. Thanks, Stephanie. Obviously a very complicated issue. I had just come on the board when we did the agreement back in 2019, and there's a lot here. Supervisor Holmes and myself sat on the ad hoc for Western County, and at that time we did not look at Eastern County issues specifically. They're not very different in the sense of the fire districts and the tax rate areas for various areas throughout our older development and throughout our county are vary dramatically. And so I asked Chair Holmes if he would consider re-engaging that ad hoc, he and I, to work on this issue to see where we might get. I understand the expectations, I think, of Truckee Fire. Whether we can fulfill those or not is probably similar to some of the issues that we faced on the western side, but I'm certainly open to the dialogue and sharing. I think when Stephanie and I met with the chief and talked through some of the issues with tax rate and what the county's receiving, I tried to also explain that they were looking at one subdivision but not looking at the whole region and what the county receives because of our lack of new development in Eastern County. We're much more like a landlocked city in that situation, that without new development you can't keep up with the costs of providing better training, more professional services, and all of our services in that area. So anyway, I appreciate the board's time. This isn't a time to set policy, it's just to appoint an ad hoc committee and understand that we understand the precedent this sets. When you have, and I'm holding the map that you shared before, this complicated of a delivery model for something so important to our community. Fire is, and wildfire, the threat of wildfire especially is one of the most important factors. And then when we hear 80 to 85% of the calls are medical calls for most of our fire service, how important that minutes make a difference in people's lives, and what training and professionalism goes along with that. You know, we would never look at law enforcement being this divided, right? But over the years, fire has evolved, and so how do we address those issues? So it's very complicated, I know, for all of you to hear this, but love to hear your input on this as well. But that was what we thought was a good compromise to make sure it got elevated to the board level to make a final decision of whatever would happen. And I think our timeline that we committed to the chief was to try to get this resolved in time for next year for budgets. So by next February or so, because it's going to take a few meetings to bring everybody up to speed and to move forward with that.
Any other comments from board members? Supervisor Gore.
Thank you. I'm certainly supportive of having the two of you work together and have conversations with board members from the fire department along with their chief and really level set what the challenges are and what the needs are, just so that there's some understanding, because I read through it and I can certainly understand the concerns they have, but I think each side needs to hear from one another right, about all the different challenges that we're trying to address. So I'm certainly supportive of you all having that conversation, well, more than one conversation, many conversations and meetings to level set and maybe come to some agreements.
Really? And I, for one, will be, I don't know if I'll be happy, but I'll be glad to participate. I've gone down this road before several times with other fire districts, but in the long run, it's an issue that needs to be resolved countywide. And if we start making deals with one district, another district's going to come forward and ask for the same thing. So it's been a long time issue that was actually precipitated by Prop 13, and where you know, their tax share was fixed, and there's no way it's encoded in the county state constitution. So we have to find a way to work around that, but it'll be a challenge. It's not my first time dealing with this, so I'll be glad to have the discussion. Supervisor Jones.
Just want to say that I will support a motion to appoint Supervisor Gustafson and Supervisor Holmes to this ad hoc committee.
All right. Is there someone that wants to second that?
You may need have public comment. I didn't mean to circumvent public comment.
You need to do public comment first. Oh, is there anyone in the public that wishes to address this item? Here we go. Sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Holmes, members of the board, Karen, Jane. Andy Sesk, Placer County Auditor Controller. As mentioned to CEO staff, I was surprised to see this item on the agenda today. And I find it unfortunate that I'm having to get up twice to speak publicly on this item. But the fortunate part for me is I get to educate the public and the board on the role of the Auditor Controller. First and foremost, I want to make sure it's clear we do not negotiate tax agreements with anybody. When I joined the City of Lincoln's Fiscal and Investment Oversight Committee, I made that really clear to the City Council. I'm not involved in negotiations. What is our role? Our role is to make sure that the terminology in the agreements is being used correctly, that we're following the appropriate laws and regulations, and more importantly, that the numbers add up to 100%, because every decimal matters when you're apportioning property taxes to the affected taxing entities in Placer County. When we make a mistake, we know about it, and we pride ourselves on not making mistakes. When I publicly spoke on this item in October 2019, I reiterated that our office interpreted AB8 correctly and that we calculated the rates correctly in Zone 7. In parallel, we received multiple requests. The slide that Stephanie presented doesn't do it due justice. We had been receiving requests in our office since the 90s, challenging the calculations and our interpretation of what was passed, which was the voters passing Prop 13, which then triggered the legislature to enact AB8. It's important to understand that many were impacted as a result of AB8. It's not just fire districts. Many special districts had fixed rates locked in, so it's not just attributable to fire districts. The other thing that I think is important to clarify is in the memo it talks about that we've given them 40% of the revenue. We gave them 40% of our ABA increment in those tax rate areas. And so this gets to the terminology, making sure that we understand what that means. We also are not sharing, they're not sharing in the supplemental roll. However, they're not subject to ERAF. Why are they not subject to ERAF? And this is Truckee Fire because they're a multi-county fire district. So the county is paying the ERAF on behalf of Truckee Fire. So it's important when we enter into negotiations, I would recommend we look at things post-ERAF because then you're comparing apples to apples countywide. I will conclude to say that we're supportive. We will provide the information needed. As you could tell with the 96 pages, we provided a lot of information in the past regarding this request, and we will continue to do so and support the efforts of the committee going forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Truckee Fire is a bi-county fire district?
It's a multi-county fire district, correct.
And if North Tahoe Fire District was able to annex into Tahoe Truckee Fire District, would that remove their obligation for ERAF?
It would not.
It would.
Currently, Meeks Bay is looking to consolidate with North Tahoe Fire District. That will not make them a multi-county district.
Oh, okay.
So this was an effort a while back when South Placer Fire and Loomis merged. They were trying to become a multi-county fire district, and that was not going to fly
Okay.
at the state level.
All right, okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any comments from board members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Auditor. Any other, is there any comments from the public?
I see none online.
There's none online, okay, thank you. So there's a motion, was there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Jones, second by Supervisor Gore. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? I'm sorry, Shanti, did you have a comment?
I just have my mic on for the vote.
Oh, okay. The motion has been moved, and there was no objections or abstentions. And I think, if I am correct, that concludes the business of the Board of Supervisors. I was shooting for noon, but I'll take it. And now we're gonna go. Good job. I'm double parked, so the chair of the county council will lead us into closed session.
The board will now adjourn to closed session to consider 3 items of existing litigation, 1 item of labor negotiations.
Madam Clerk, are you ready? All right, the board has just returned from closed session, and county council will report out.
The board met in closed session to consider the following. Under existing litigation, Gill versus County of Placer, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. Estate of Temple versus County of Placer, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. Osborne versus Placer County Department of Human Services, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. Under labor negotiations, the board held labor negotiations regarding DSA. The board heard a report. No action requested or taken. This concludes the report out of closed session.
And at 12:43 p.m., this concludes our County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Just wanted that on the record, huh?
Yes.
It's been a little while since that's happened.
Oh, thank you.